Clara Barton was born in 1821 in a small town called North Oxford, Massachusetts. Known as the Angel of the Battlefield, her life was one of quiet dedication, unwavering service, and remarkable compassion. At a time when the roles of women were often confined to the domestic sphere, Clara Barton forged a path of humanitarian work that would echo through history. Her journey took her from the classrooms of Massachusetts to the battlefields of the Civil War, and ultimately to the founding of the American Red Cross, an institution that continues to provide aid and comfort to those in need around the world. The story of Clara Barton is one of a deep, steady commitment to others, shaped by the turbulence of her time, the American Civil War and the transformation of the nation. Through her eyes, we see the profound impact of compassion, resilience, and the human spirit's capacity to heal and rebuild in the face of adversity. As you settle into this story, feel the slow unfolding of Clara Barton's life, marked by quiet determination and a legacy that endures. Let her story guide you gently through time as you listen and relax, drifting softly into the rhythm of history. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share where you're listening from as we embark on this journey into the past. Clara Barton's life began in the early 19th century, a time when America was still finding its place in the world. Born on December 25, 1821, in North Oxford, Massachusetts, she came into a family that valued hard work, discipline, and community. Her father, Stephen Barton, was a veteran of the American Revolution, and her mother, Sarah Stone Barton, was a homemaker who managed a household with great care. Clara was the youngest of 5 children, and from an early age she observed her parents' values, which would later shape her own life's work. The Barton family lived in a modest rural home, far removed from the bustling cities of America. Their life was simple, yet their home was filled with love and a sense of duty to one another. Clara's father instilled in her a sense of honour and responsibility, while her mother encouraged her to care for others. It was in this nurturing environment that Clara began to develop the character traits that would define her in later years: compassion, perseverance, and an unwavering dedication to helping those in need. Clara's early years were marked by a quiet curiosity about the world around her. She was an eager learner, often spending time with her older siblings, absorbing the knowledge they passed on to her. Her father was a storyteller, and in the evenings Clara would listen attentively as he shared tales of his own experiences during the Revolution. These stories shaped Clara's understanding of sacrifice and duty, concepts that would later become central to her work in the Red Cross. However, Clara's childhood was not without its challenges. At the age of 3, Clara fell seriously ill, and for several years she was unable to attend school regularly. During this period, Clara's mother took on the role of teacher, guiding Clara through her lessons at home. Clara's illness would later become a defining feature of her character. She faced adversity with quiet resilience, never allowing hardship to define her. Despite her illness, Clara's passion for learning never wavered. She was particularly drawn to subjects that helped others: literature, history, and the sciences. She loved reading about the lives of great figures and was fascinated by stories of people who overcame adversity and helped their communities. This fascination would later shape her desire to become a nurse and humanitarian, though these ideas were not yet fully formed in her young mind. Clara's time at home also allowed her to develop her deep empathy for those in need. Her mother's encouragement to care for others was not just a lesson in kindness, but also in responsibility. Clara would often tend to her sick relatives, helping them with daily tasks and offering comfort in their time of need. It was in these moments that she first realized the power of a compassionate hand, the ability to bring solace in times of distress. By the time Clara was in her teens, she'd regained her health and was ready to step out into the world. She enrolled in a local school and began attending classes more regularly. Clara's academic abilities became apparent early on, and she excelled in subjects that required precision and attention to detail. Her quick mind and willingness to learn made her a favourite among her teachers, and she was soon recognised for her intelligence and determination. In 1838, at the age of 17, Clara took her first teaching job in a neighbouring town. Though still quite young, she proved herself to be a competent and compassionate educator. Clara's teaching style was patient and encouraging, qualities that earned her the respect and admiration of her students. It was during this time that Clara realised her calling was not only to educate but to serve. Her work as a teacher was not just a job, but a way to contribute to the well-being of her community. She took great pride in her role and was dedicated to the success of her students, believing that every child deserved the opportunity to learn and grow. As Clara's career as a teacher began to take shape, she also began to understand the broader issues facing her society. She observed the struggles of her students, many of whom came from families with little to no resources. She saw the hardships that women faced in a world that offered few opportunities for them to advance. It was these observations that planted the seeds for Clara's future work in public service and humanitarian efforts. The early part of Clara's life was marked by an unwavering commitment to education, service, and compassion. Her family's influence, combined with her personal determination and resilience, laid the foundation for a life dedicated to the welfare of others. In these formative years, Clara Barton began to understand the importance of caring for those who could not care for themselves, a principle that would guide her through the rest of her life. By the time Clara was in her early 20s, her path had become clear. She would continue to teach, but her heart and mind were already leaning toward a broader purpose, helping those in need, especially during times of crisis. It was not yet apparent how her journey would unfold, but her early life had provided her with the tools to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Clara's passion for service, her love for learning, and her deep sense of responsibility would soon lead her to one of the most important roles in American history. Clara Barton's journey from a young teacher to a nationally recognized humanitarian was not an abrupt leap, but rather a gradual progression shaped by the formative experiences of her early years. Education, both formal and informal, played a crucial role in shaping the values and skills that would define her legacy. It was during her educational years that Clara began to understand the broader societal needs that she would later address with such unwavering determination. As Clara entered her teenage years, the importance of education was becoming more apparent to her. While she'd struggled with illness during her early childhood, it was through her schooling that she discovered her passion for learning. Her family, particularly her mother, placed a strong emphasis on academic achievement, and Clara excelled in her studies despite the challenges of her health. Clara's early education, however, wasn't limited to the walls of a classroom. Much of her learning came from her family, particularly from her father. Stephen Barton was a well-read man, a veteran of the American Revolution who believed in the importance of knowledge and education. He would often spend hours discussing history, politics, and social issues with Clara and her siblings, passing on his passion for the world beyond their small town. These discussions ignited Clara's interest in the greater world, especially in how different societies functioned and how people helped one another in times of crisis. Despite her shyness, Clara's academic abilities were apparent, and she soon gained the confidence to attend local school in Oxford. Her teachers recognized her bright intellect, and she quickly became one of their most capable students. However, Clara's true test would come in 1838, at the age of 17, when she took on her first teaching position in a nearby town, a role that would help shape her sense of purpose and dedication. At the time, women's roles in society were largely confined to the home or, at best, teaching, a profession generally seen as an extension of motherhood and domestic responsibility. Yet Clara approached her role as a teacher with seriousness and commitment, wanting to ensure that her students, many of whom came from struggling families, received a proper education. She used her own challenges, her experience with illness and a deep empathy for those in need, as a guide in working with her students. Clara taught in a one-room schoolhouse where her pupils ranged from young children to adults seeking an education later in life. Despite her own youth, Clara took pride in her role as an educator. She understood that her work was not just about imparting knowledge, but about giving her students the tools to better their lives. She worked tirelessly to meet their needs, creating lesson plans that would engage them and encourage intellectual growth. In turn, her students admired her patience and the way she truly cared for their learning. The challenges of teaching, however, were not just confined to the classroom. Clara was struck by the lack of resources available for students, especially in rural areas like hers. Many of her students came from poor families and had to work long hours before attending school, often arriving tired and distracted. Clara's heart went out to them, and she did everything she could to make their experience more enriching. She would use every spare moment to help students catch up on lessons and even travel to nearby towns to bring back educational materials, often at her own expense. Her work as a teacher also reinforced a key value that Clara would carry with her throughout her life: the importance of helping others, especially those who were vulnerable or less fortunate. This sense of service was ingrained in her character and would soon lead her to focus on a much broader mission. While she may have initially thought her role as a teacher was her calling, Clara's growing awareness of the needs around her began to shift her focus to something greater. The turning point came when Clara was asked to teach in a larger town, where she would work with a diverse group of students, including those with special needs. This position, although rewarding, brought Clara face to face with the harsh realities of life in 19th century America. She witnessed firsthand the struggles of the poor, the marginalized, and the sick, which led her to question how she could serve a wider community beyond the confines of the classroom. Clara's work in education not only shaped her understanding of social issues, but also gave her the confidence to pursue something even more daring. In a time when few women stepped outside the domestic sphere, Clara's involvement in teaching provided her with a unique platform to take on larger societal challenges. Her time as a teacher made her acutely aware of the injustices around her, especially in how women were often excluded from the same opportunities as men. This understanding would soon fuel her determination to do more, pushing her beyond the boundaries of teaching and into the world of humanitarian service. It was also during this period that Clara began to think more critically about her role in the world and what she could do to contribute to society. She became increasingly inspired by stories of people who had changed the world, including leaders like Florence Nightingale, whose pioneering work in nursing during the Crimean War served as a significant influence on Clara. Nightingale's example sparked in Clara a desire to help those in need, particularly in times of disaster, and it was this inspiration that would eventually lead her to the battlefield of the American Civil War. As she honed her skills as a teacher, Clara also began to develop the resilience, determination, and leadership skills that would serve her well in the years to come. Although her time as a teacher was only the beginning of her career, it was during these formative years that Clara Barton's character was shaped. Her education, both in the classroom and through her experiences as a teacher, set the stage for the incredible work she would later accomplish, and the commitment to helping others would become the driving force of her life. In 1851, Clara Barton moved to the bustling city of New York, a city teeming with energy and opportunity. At the time, she was just 30 years old, and her reputation as a dedicated and capable teacher had already begun to spread. Clara's move to New York marked a significant step in her life, a departure from her rural roots and the small towns where she'd spent most of her early years. But more importantly, it signaled her increasing desire to make a broader impact on society. New York, with its growing population and rapid industrialization, was both a place of promise and a land of stark contrasts. Clara had lived most of her life in quieter, smaller communities, where she'd known most people by name. New York, in contrast, was an anonymous world of thousands of strangers, each with their own dreams and struggles. Yet Clara felt drawn to the city's vibrancy, its opportunities for growth, and the challenge it presented. It was here that she could further develop her skills, both as an educator and as someone with the ability to bring about change. Clara found a position at the prestigious North Female Institute, an all-girls school in the heart of New York. The position offered her a place among some of the city's most respected educators, and Clara embraced it fully. However, teaching in New York presented new challenges. The students were from wealthy families, and many were accustomed to a different kind of education than Clara had provided in the smaller schools of Massachusetts. In these schools, education was not just about reading and writing. It was also about manners, social graces, and the acquisition of skills that would prepare students for their future roles in society. Clara found herself teaching young women who were being prepared for a life of privilege, not necessarily one of service. While Clara's students were attentive and respectful, there was a part of her that felt a disconnect between the lives they were leading and the work she'd set out to do in the world. She was surrounded by young women who had everything they needed, yet they seemed to lack a true understanding of the struggles of the less fortunate. This, too, was a learning experience for Clara, one that helped her refine her own beliefs about the role of education in shaping society. While her work at the school was fulfilling in many ways, Clara began to realize that her calling was still evolving. Her time at the North Female Institute also brought her into contact with many people who were not only involved in education but were also deeply engaged in social issues. Among these individuals were women's rights activists, philanthropists, and social reformers, all of whom had a profound influence on Clara's views. She was particularly inspired by those who were working to provide education and support to underprivileged women and children. It was these interactions that sparked her interest in working outside of the classroom, to bring her skills to places where they were needed most. Places that could not afford the luxury of an elite education. As Clara continued her work as a teacher, she also began to explore other avenues for service. She became increasingly involved in charity work, helping to organize efforts for the poor and offering her time to various social causes. It was not long before Clara began to see the broader implications of her work as a teacher. She realized that her ability to educate, while important, was just one part of the larger puzzle of social change. She could teach the young women of New York to be better citizens, but she could also use her skills to help those who were most in need, those who had no access to education, healthcare, or even the basic necessities of life. Her involvement in charity work introduced her to new groups of people, including many of the city's leaders and philanthropists. Clara began attending meetings and rallies, where she met women who were already working to bring about social change. These women, many of them from wealthy backgrounds, used their influence to support causes like the abolition of slavery, the advancement of women's rights, and the improvement of working conditions for the poor. Clara became inspired by their passion and determination, and she began to think about how she could contribute to these causes in her own way. By this time, Clara had become convinced that her true calling lay not in teaching wealthy students, but in offering her services to the people who needed help the most. Her time in New York had opened her eyes to the harsh realities faced by the poor, the sick, and the marginalized. She could no longer ignore the fact that her skills as an educator and organizer could be put to use in more urgent and impactful ways. But Clara's life would soon take an unexpected turn, one that would lead her far beyond the boundaries of New York City. The outbreak of the Civil War in 1861 marked a turning point in Clara's life, and the nation's struggles would soon demand all of her energy and determination. Though Clara had been primarily focused on education and social reform up until this point, the Civil War would transform her into one of the most famous and respected humanitarian figures in American history. New York, with its rich cultural and intellectual life, had served as the perfect backdrop for Clara's growth as a teacher, social reformer, and leader. It was in this vibrant city that Clara first came to understand the broader impact of education and service. While her time at the North Female Institute and her work with various charitable organizations had been rewarding, Clara was now ready to take on a new role. The coming of the Civil War would offer her the chance to apply her skills in a way she had never imagined, on the front lines of a nation at war. The outbreak of the American Civil War in 1861 sent shockwaves throughout the nation, as families, communities, and even the government were forced to choose sides. For Clara Barton, the war would mark the beginning of her transformation from a schoolteacher and social reformer into a national figure known for her compassion and tireless humanitarian efforts. At the time, Clara was living in Washington, D.C., having relocated there in 1855 to continue her work with the U.S. Patent Office. She had already established herself as a dedicated public servant, but the events of the war would push her toward a role she had never anticipated. When hostilities began, Clara immediately felt a deep sense of responsibility to help the wounded soldiers, who she knew would need urgent medical care, comfort, and supplies. It was this internal call to action that propelled her into the heart of the conflict. Clara was not alone in her desire to help. The war had opened the door for many women to contribute to the war effort, especially in medical and nursing capacities. Yet, the reality for women during the Civil War was that their involvement was often limited by the societal norms of the time. Women were expected to stay at home, keeping the household and family running while men went off to fight. However, Clara Barton, determined to make a difference, found ways to break through these limitations. She was driven not by fame or recognition, but by a deep and unwavering commitment to care for those in need. In the early years of the war, Clara found herself in Washington, D.C., where she became a volunteer, delivering supplies to Union hospitals and soldiers. Though she lacked formal medical training, Clara's ability to organize and coordinate care proved invaluable. She quickly earned a reputation for her efficiency, compassion, and unwavering dedication. She would often venture into the battlefields, delivering supplies directly to soldiers and offering comfort to the wounded. Clara worked relentlessly, braving the dangers of war to ensure that soldiers, many of whom were far from home and isolated from their loved ones, felt the presence of someone who cared deeply for them. It was not uncommon for Clara to spend days at a time working in hospitals, tending to the wounded and managing logistics for the delivery of medical supplies. She became well acquainted with the harsh realities of war, both the physical suffering of the soldiers and the emotional toll it took on them. Yet, Clara never wavered. She was determined to be a steady presence for those who needed her the most. She wrote letters to soldiers' families, offering updates on their loved ones and providing comfort to those waiting for word from the front lines. During these early years of the war, Clara also began to realize the immense scale of the crisis facing the country. The war was not just about fighting battles, it was about sustaining the lives of those affected by it. Clara's experiences on the battlefield deepened her resolve to help, and she began to focus her efforts on organizing supplies and providing medical care to the wounded soldiers. She worked tirelessly to gather food, clothing, and medical supplies, and used her network to ensure that the most critical needs were met. Clara was among the first to recognize the importance of systematic organization in times of crisis, and she would later apply this lesson to her work with the American Red Cross. The suffering Clara witnessed was heart-wrenching. Hospitals were overcrowded with wounded soldiers, many of whom had little chance of recovery. There were not enough doctors, nurses, or medical supplies to care for the sheer number of casualties. It was a grim, exhausting reality that weighed heavily on Clara's heart. Yet rather than being overwhelmed by the chaos, she found a sense of purpose in it. She became a tireless advocate for the soldiers, always seeking ways to ease their suffering and offer them some comfort. Her presence became a symbol of hope amid the darkness, and the soldiers came to rely on her calm demeanor and unwavering compassion. As the war dragged on, Clara's role in the Union effort grew. In 1862, she was appointed to serve as a nurse in the field, a position that brought her even closer to the horrors of the battlefield. Clara found herself on the front lines of some of the most brutal and devastating battles, including the Battle of Antietam, the bloodiest single-day battle of the war. There, she tended to the wounded and dying, offering whatever comfort she could to those who'd been left behind. Despite the terrifying conditions, Clara remained steady, a calm presence amid the chaos. The Battle of Antietam was a defining moment for Clara. The scale of the destruction was unlike anything she had ever seen. The wounded soldiers, many of them gravely injured, were brought to field hospitals in desperate need of care. Clara worked day and night, administering first aid, comforting soldiers, and helping to organise the chaotic medical efforts. The experience left a deep impression on her, solidifying her belief in the importance of providing care in times of crisis. It also sparked a desire to continue her work on a larger scale, eventually leading to her founding the American Red Cross. Despite the extreme conditions and the emotional toll it took on her, Clara remained focused on her mission. She moved from battlefield to battlefield, offering support and care wherever it was most needed. As the war continued, Clara's role expanded beyond simply caring for the wounded. She became an important figure in organising medical supplies, ensuring that hospitals were properly equipped, and coordinating with various agencies to streamline efforts for the soldiers. Though Clara was not a formal member of the Union Army, her work was vital to the war effort. She established herself as a trusted figure among the soldiers and medical professionals, and her reputation for compassion and efficiency spread. By the end of the war, Clara had personally attended to the needs of thousands of soldiers, providing not only physical care but also the emotional comfort that was so desperately needed in times of war. The Civil War was a transformative experience for Clara Barton. It was during these years that she solidified her commitment to serving others, and it was here that she first demonstrated the qualities that would define her legacy: resilience, compassion, and an unshakable resolve to help those in need. Clara's time on the battlefield was not only a reflection of her capacity to care, but also a testament to her belief in the power of service to heal the wounds of both body and soul. As the war came to an end in 1865, Clara's work did not stop. She had already laid the foundation for what would become one of the most significant humanitarian organizations in the world, the American Red Cross. But the Civil War had also left Clara with a deep sense of duty to continue her work in new and meaningful ways, and she would soon turn her attention to the future, where the need for humanitarian efforts would only grow. Clara Barton's transformation from a school teacher to the angel of the battlefield was a gradual yet profound shift, rooted in the personal experiences she had during the Civil War. By the time the war reached its critical years, Clara had already committed herself wholeheartedly to serving the soldiers who were fighting and suffering in the war's brutal conditions. Her work as a nurse would forever change her life, marking the beginning of her remarkable legacy. When Clara first began volunteering during the Civil War, she had no formal training in nursing. Her background had been in education, and although she had cared for sick relatives in her early life, she was not a medical professional. Yet what Clara lacked in formal medical training, she made up for in empathy, resolve, and the desire to help in any way she could. She quickly learned the practical aspects of nursing from the doctors and fellow volunteers around her, developing the skills necessary to offer care to those who were suffering. One of Clara's first significant assignments as a nurse was at the Battle of Antietam in 1862. The Battle of Antietam was one of the bloodiest battles of the Civil War, resulting in an estimated 22,000 casualties over a single day. The sheer scale of the destruction was overwhelming, with men lying wounded on the battlefield, in need of immediate medical attention, but with limited resources to tend to them. Clara arrived at the battlefield amidst the chaos and destruction, prepared to do whatever it took to help those who were suffering. The conditions Clara faced on the battlefield were grim. The medical facilities were overcrowded, with makeshift hospitals set up in churches, barns, and private homes. There were not enough doctors or nurses to attend to all the wounded, and the wounded soldiers were often left untreated for days. Yet Clara was undeterred. She worked tirelessly, organising care for the soldiers, assisting with surgeries and providing whatever comfort she could. Her calm and reassuring presence became a beacon of hope for many, a symbol of compassion amidst the brutality of war. Clara also proved herself to be highly resourceful in the midst of the crisis. As she moved from one makeshift hospital to another, she helped to establish efficient systems for organising supplies, arranging transportation, and coordinating the care of soldiers. Her ability to think on her feet and adapt to the ever-changing conditions of war made her invaluable to the medical team she worked with. Clara had an extraordinary capacity to stay focused on the immediate needs of the soldiers, always prioritizing their care and well-being above all else. One of Clara's most remarkable qualities during her time as a battlefield nurse was her ability to connect with the soldiers on a deeply personal level. She did not simply treat their wounds, she also offered them emotional support. Many soldiers were far from home, facing death and injury in a foreign landscape, and Clara's presence brought them comfort in their darkest moments. She often wrote letters to the families of soldiers, updating them on their loved ones' conditions and offering reassurance. She became a trusted figure for the soldiers, someone who would listen to their stories, offer kind words, and provide physical care with tenderness. Clara's work was not limited to direct medical care. She also became deeply involved in the logistics of war relief. She recognized that the war's impact extended far beyond the battlefield, and the need for aid was constant. Clara took it upon herself to secure donations of medical supplies, food and clothing for the soldiers. She worked closely with various organizations, helping to ensure that essential goods reached the men on the front lines. Her organizational skills and tireless efforts allowed her to establish a network of support that helped sustain the troops through the hardships they faced. Her reputation as a nurse and humanitarian continued to grow as the war raged on. She became known not only for her medical care but also for her compassion and organizational skills. Clara's work was not just about treating physical wounds. It was also about providing emotional support to the soldiers, easing their suffering, and ensuring they knew that they were not forgotten. Her ability to maintain her calm and steady demeanor in the face of overwhelming challenges made her a key figure in the Union's war effort. Clara's role as a nurse on the battlefield was unique in its scope. She was not officially part of the military, nor did she have the training that many of the other nurses had received. Yet Clara's sense of duty and her deep empathy for the soldiers who were suffering made her an indispensable asset. Over the course of the war, Clara attended to countless wounded men working in hospitals, field camps, and even on the front lines wherever there was a need for assistance. She put in long hours, often working without rest, but her dedication never wavered. By the end of the war, Clara had become an iconic figure in the history of American nursing. She had given selflessly of herself, often risking her own life to be on the front lines with the soldiers. Her contributions were recognized not only by the Union Army, but also by the soldiers she had helped. They affectionately referred to her as the Angel of the Battlefield, a title that would remain with her for the rest of her life. The gratitude and admiration she earned from the soldiers were a testament to the deep bond she had forged with them during the war. Clara Barton's time as a battlefield nurse had a profound impact on her. It solidified her belief in the importance of humanitarian work and deepened her resolve to continue serving others. Yet, the war's end did not bring an end to her work. In many ways, it marked the beginning of a new chapter in Clara's life, one in which she would expand her efforts beyond the battlefield and take on a larger role in the humanitarian movement. The skills she had developed during the war, combined with the passion that had driven her to the front lines, would eventually lead her to establish one of the most important humanitarian organizations in history. In the years following the Civil War, Clara Barton would focus on continuing her work with the American Red Cross, expanding its reach and influence. But her time as a nurse in the Civil War remained one of the defining experiences of her life. It was there, on the battlefields and in the hospitals, that Clara Barton proved herself to be a woman of extraordinary strength, resilience, and compassion, qualities that would shape the rest of her life and legacy. Clara Barton's experiences during the Civil War transformed her, not only personally but also in terms of her sense of purpose. As she moved from battlefield to battlefield, hospital to hospital, she witnessed firsthand the immense suffering of soldiers who were wounded in combat. Yet, beyond the physical wounds, Clara also saw the psychological toll of war, the fear, isolation, and despair of men separated from their families, enduring unimaginable pain in remote and chaotic settings. It was during these critical moments that Clara's role as a caregiver took on a profound new dimension. While Clara's initial involvement in the war was largely focused on organizing supplies and delivering medical care, she quickly realized that the soldiers' needs extended far beyond the immediate treatment of their injuries. The psychological wounds of war, the trauma, the fear, and the emotional scars needed attention as well. Clara understood that caring for the soldiers was not just about tending to their physical health, but also providing them with emotional comfort and support. This holistic approach to care became one of Clara's defining features and laid the groundwork for her future work with the American Red Cross. One of Clara's greatest contributions during the war was her ability to bring a sense of humanity to the soldiers who had been abandoned by both society and their families. Many soldiers had been left to suffer without receiving the comfort or care they so desperately needed. Clara's quiet and unwavering presence provided them with a sense of hope amid the horrors of war. She was a nurse, but she was also a confidant, a friend, and a motherly figure to the men who lay wounded on the battlefield. The soldiers were often separated from their families for months at a time, and many feared they would never see their loved ones again. Clara understood the importance of keeping the soldiers connected to their families, so she began writing letters for them. Many soldiers could neither read nor write, and Clara became their voice, composing letters to mothers, wives, and children, offering reassurances and sharing news. This act of correspondence, while seemingly small, became an essential part of Clara's work. She became the bridge between the soldiers and their families, offering comfort through her words. Clara's work on the battlefield was not limited to the soldiers she cared for personally. She also took on a leadership role in organizing relief efforts for those who were suffering. She worked tirelessly to gather supplies, from food and medicine to blankets and clothing, to ensure that the soldiers had the necessities they needed. In addition to the hospitals, Clara set up makeshift kitchens and supply stations to meet the needs of the troops, often working around the clock to make sure they were well cared for. In the course of her work, Clara was exposed to some of the most traumatic aspects of war, including the sight of death and the physical toll it took on the soldiers. Yet she remained resolute in her mission to help. Her ability to remain calm and steady in the face of such adversity became a source of strength for the soldiers who relied on her. Clara didn't just provide medical care, she became a symbol of hope, a reminder to the soldiers that even in the darkest moments, there was someone who cared about their well-being. As Clara's work continued, her reputation as a dedicated and compassionate nurse spread. She became known as the Angel of the Battlefield, a title that captured the essence of her work. Yet Clara was not seeking fame or recognition. Her focus was solely on the soldiers who needed her. Her deep commitment to the cause, along with her ability to work in difficult and often dangerous conditions, earned her the respect and admiration of both the soldiers and the doctors she worked alongside. By 1864, Clara was given the responsibility of overseeing the distribution of supplies to the hospitals in the Washington, D.C. area. She managed to set up a vast network of volunteers and medical workers to ensure that the wounded soldiers received care as quickly as possible. Clara's organizational skills became one of her greatest assets, and she was able to mobilize large groups of people to work together in a coordinated effort to bring relief to the soldiers on the front lines. It was a remarkable feat of logistics and leadership that helped Clara build the foundation for the American Red Cross. Her time on the battlefield left Clara deeply affected by the suffering she had witnessed. The emotional toll of caring for the wounded soldiers was immense, and Clara often worked late into the night, not just treating injuries but offering comfort and companionship. The pain of the soldiers who were separated from their families, many of whom had no one to turn to, stayed with Clara long after the war had ended. It was this experience that led Clara to realize that the need for humanitarian work would continue long after the Civil War had finished. The war had introduced her to the harsh realities of suffering, but it had also shown her the power of compassion and organization in addressing those needs. Clara understood that while the war might have ended, the work of helping others was far from over. The wounded soldiers, the grieving families, and the communities affected by the war all needed support, and Clara Barton knew that she could play a role in helping to meet those needs. As the war came to a close in 1865, Clara had already begun to consider what her next steps would be. She had found her true calling, serving those in need during times of crisis, and she was determined to continue her work in a more organised and sustained way. The lesson she'd learned on the battlefield, from the importance of coordination and supply distribution to the deep emotional needs of those who had suffered, would shape her future endeavours. Clara Barton's time as a battlefield nurse was transformative, both for her and for the thousands of soldiers she helped. Her compassion and unwavering dedication left an indelible mark on the history of humanitarian work, and it was this period of her life that would lay the foundation for the creation of the American Red Cross, an organisation that would forever change the landscape of disaster relief. The Civil War had shown Clara Barton the dire need for a systematic approach to caring for soldiers, and as the war progressed, she began to see how her organisational skills could be put to even greater use. Clara's experience on the battlefield and in hospitals had taught her that the logistical and medical systems for treating the wounded were often chaotic and insufficient. She understood that the soldiers needed not just immediate care, but also an efficient, organised system that could ensure they were treated in a timely manner. Clara was now fully aware that humanitarian efforts required more than just passion. They needed a structure that could sustain the work over time. During the war, Clara's work had been largely volunteer-based. She would gather supplies, provide assistance in hospitals, and tend to the wounded wherever they were. But the work was often ad hoc and lacked the necessary coordination. Recognising the immense challenges posed by the war, Clara began to advocate for a more organised system of medical relief. This idea would evolve into her work with the Army of the Potomac hospitals, where she worked tirelessly to ensure that injured soldiers received timely and professional care. In 1862, Clara was given permission to organise hospitals for the Union soldiers, starting with the Army of the Potomac, the primary army fighting in the Eastern Theatre of the war. This was a major step in her efforts to bring structure and efficiency to medical care for the soldiers. She worked alongside military doctors and officials, coordinating the movement of medical supplies and establishing temporary hospitals where they were needed most. Clara's role was pivotal in setting up mobile hospitals that could follow the army as it advanced or retreated, ensuring that soldiers in need of care were never far from medical help. The hospitals were not just makeshift tents, but organised medical units, each with its own set of doctors, nurses, and supplies. Clara worked with both men and women volunteers to care for the soldiers, supervising the nurses and ensuring that they were trained to meet the needs of the injured. She also oversaw the care of the soldiers who were transported from the battlefield to the hospitals, making sure that they received adequate rest, food, and medical treatment. While Clara's efforts were largely focused on the medical needs of the soldiers, she also took on the emotional support of the men in the hospitals. Many soldiers arrived at the hospitals not just with physical wounds, but with emotional scars as well. They had seen friends and comrades die in battle, and many were far from home, in unfamiliar and dangerous territory. Clara's compassionate presence became a comforting force for these soldiers. She would sit with them, listen to their stories, and offer reassurance in times of distress. She helped to foster an environment of empathy and care within the hospitals, one where soldiers felt they were more than just patients. They were human beings whose suffering mattered. Clara was also instrumental in setting up a more efficient system for delivering supplies to the hospitals. She organised the collection of food, medicine, and bandages from various charitable organisations, ensuring that the hospitals were stocked with the essentials they needed. Her work helped to ensure that the medical teams could focus on treating the wounded, rather than worrying about where the next shipment of supplies would come from. Clara's ability to streamline these efforts helped to increase the efficiency and impact of the hospitals, ensuring that more soldiers could be cared for in a timely manner. As Clara worked to improve the conditions in the hospitals, she began to recognise the need for an even larger, more organised relief effort. She knew that the Army of the Potomac was just one part of a much larger conflict, and the medical needs of soldiers throughout the country were immense. This realization would become a driving force behind her future work with the American Red Cross. Clara understood that the Army's hospitals, while critical, could only address a small fraction of the total needs. The vast scale of the war's human cost demanded a far-reaching permanent organization capable of responding to the needs of soldiers, civilians, and communities affected by the war. Clara Barton's experience in organizing hospitals during the war became one of the most important chapters in the development of her vision for the American Red Cross. She saw firsthand how critical it was to have a well-organized, systematic approach to disaster relief. This understanding would guide her as she worked to create an organization that could respond to both the immediate and long-term needs of those suffering from the aftermath of war, natural disasters, and other crises. By the end of the war, Clara had transformed not just the medical care available to soldiers, but the way that care was organized and delivered. Her work with the Army of the Potomac hospitals helped to create a more effective system for treating the wounded, one that was based on clear protocols, supply chains, and the involvement of both trained professionals and volunteers. Clara's leadership in this effort was a testament to her ability to think strategically, to organize on a large scale, and to inspire others to join her mission of humanitarian service. When the war finally came to an end in 1865, Clara's reputation as a humanitarian had been cemented. The soldiers she'd cared for, the doctors and nurses she had worked alongside, and the communities that had been impacted by her efforts, all knew her as a tireless advocate for the welfare of others. Yet Clara Barton's journey was far from over. The Civil War may have ended, but the need for compassionate service to others, particularly in times of crisis, would remain a driving force in Clara's life. With the foundation of the Army of the Potomac hospitals now in place, Clara's thoughts turned to the larger vision she had for a permanent nationwide humanitarian organization. It was through her work with these hospitals that she would come to recognize the power of organization and coordination, and how essential these elements were for effective disaster relief. The next chapter of Clara's journey would see her take her work to a new level, expanding her efforts from the battlefield to the entire country and eventually the world. As the Civil War came to a close in 1865, Clara Barton found herself reflecting on the extraordinary challenges she had faced over the past 4 years. The war had tested her on every level, physically, emotionally, and mentally, but it had also reaffirmed her unwavering commitment to service. Clara had witnessed firsthand the horrors of war, the suffering of soldiers, and the toll it took on both the physical and psychological well-being of those involved. Yet, despite the hardships, the war had also shown Clara the power of compassion and the profound impact that a single individual could have on the lives of others. In the years following the war, Clara struggled with the emotional and physical toll it had taken on her. She'd worked tirelessly, often without rest, to care for the wounded soldiers, organize relief efforts, and support the families of the men who had died. The weight of the suffering she'd witnessed lingered in her mind, and Clara found herself needing a break, a chance to recover and regain her strength. During this period of reflection, Clara returned to her home in Massachusetts, where she spent time recuperating and rethinking her life's purpose. She began to contemplate what came next. The war had ended, and the immediate need for medical care had subsided. Yet Clara knew that the need for humanitarian work was far from over. She recognized that the lessons learned during the war, particularly in terms of organization and mobilization, had broader applications. Clara's experiences had shown her that there was a great deal of work to be done, not just for soldiers, but for civilians, those affected by natural disasters, and communities suffering from poverty, disease, and neglect. Clara's thoughts turned to the future. What was needed, she realized, was not just a temporary solution, but a permanent, organized system capable of responding to the ever-present needs of those in crisis. The American Red Cross, an organization Clara had been inspired by during her time in Europe, began to take shape in her mind as the means by which she could continue her mission on a larger scale. The Red Cross would not only provide medical care in times of war, but also extend its reach to help in natural disasters, epidemics, and other humanitarian crises. As Clara began to explore the idea of creating the American Red Cross, she faced many obstacles. The country had just emerged from a devastating war, and there was little appetite for further expansion of the government or for the creation of new organizations. Clara knew that she would need to rally support from key figures in both the government and the philanthropic community to make her vision a reality. Yet Clara's determination and resilience, qualities that had been forged on the battlefields and in the hospitals, drove her forward. While Clara was committed to the idea of the Red Cross, she was also keenly aware of the limitations that existed in a country recovering from war. The logistics of running an organisation on such a large scale were daunting, and Clara was under no illusions about the work it would take to establish the organisation and keep it operational. Yet, despite the challenges, Clara felt a deep sense of responsibility to make the Red Cross a reality. The war had shown her that there were moments in history when ordinary people could rise to meet extraordinary challenges, and Clara Barton was determined to be one of those people. One of the first steps in Clara's journey to establish the American Red Cross was to travel to Europe. During the Civil War, Clara had come across information about the International Red Cross, an organisation that had been founded in 1863 by Henry Dunant in response to the suffering caused by war and natural disasters. Clara was deeply inspired by the work of the International Red Cross and saw its potential as a model for humanitarian aid in the United States. She knew that if she could bring the same principles to America, the impact could be profound. In 1869, Clara travelled to Switzerland, where the headquarters of the International Red Cross were located. There, she met with key figures in the organisation and learned more about its structure, its efforts in providing relief during wartime, and its work in assisting victims of natural disasters. Clara was particularly struck by the neutrality of the organisation, its commitment to providing aid to those in need, regardless of which side they were on during conflicts. This principle of neutrality would become one of the core tenets of the American Red Cross. Clara returned to the United States with a renewed sense of purpose. She immediately set about gaining support for the establishment of the American Red Cross. Her experience in Europe had shown her that the American public needed to be educated about the importance of humanitarian work and the potential benefits of an organisation like the Red Cross. Clara's ability to communicate her vision, her passion for service, and her deep commitment to humanitarian causes won her the support of influential figures in both the government and the philanthropic community. It wasn't long before Clara's dream began to take shape. In 1881, after years of advocacy and hard work, Clara Barton successfully founded the American Red Cross. The organization's mission was clear: to provide emergency relief during natural disasters, to offer medical care to wounded soldiers during times of war, and to ensure that the basic human rights of all people were protected during times of crisis. Clara's leadership in the early years of the organization helped lay the groundwork for what would become one of the most important humanitarian institutions in the world. As Clara Barton looked back on her life in the years following the Civil War, she could see how much she had grown as an individual and as a leader. The war had shaped her in profound ways, deepening her empathy for those who suffered and sharpening her ability to respond to human need. Yet, despite the hardships, Clara found peace in knowing that her work had made a difference. The creation of the American Red Cross would ensure that her legacy would continue long after the war had ended. The years following the Civil War were a time of reflection and renewal for Clara, but they were also a time of growth and new beginnings. Clara Barton's unwavering dedication to helping those in need had inspired a generation, and the American Red Cross, which she had founded, would carry her mission forward for generations to come. Clara Barton's time in Europe in the late 1860s marked a pivotal moment in her journey. It was there that her vision for the American Red Cross truly began to take shape. Influenced by her exposure to the International Red Cross and the humanitarian principles it embodied, although Clara had already made significant strides in her efforts to provide aid to soldiers during the Civil War, it was her time in Europe that gave her the final inspiration she needed to push forward with her mission on a larger, more global scale. In 1869, Clara travelled to Switzerland, where the headquarters of the International Red Cross were located. Her journey was both personal and professional, a quest for knowledge and deep desire to better understand how humanitarian aid could be organised and implemented in an efficient and sustainable manner. What she encountered in Switzerland was far beyond what she had imagined. Clara was able to observe the workings of the International Red Cross firsthand and to meet with Henry Dunant, the founder of the organisation. Dunant's vision for the Red Cross had emerged during the Battle of Solferino in 1859, when he witnessed the horrific suffering of soldiers who had been left unattended due to the chaos of war. His experience inspired him to call for the establishment of neutral volunteer organisations that would provide medical aid to those affected by war, regardless of their nationality or the side they fought on. Dunant's ideas led to the formation of the International Red Cross, an organisation founded on the principle of impartiality, neutrality, and independence. During her visit, Clara learned that the International Red Cross was not just focused on wartime relief, but also engaged in providing assistance during natural disasters and epidemics. Clara was struck by the scale and organisation of the effort. The Red Cross had developed a clear set of protocols for responding to disasters, and it had become a respected institution around the world. Its influence was growing, and its mission was resonating deeply with people who believed in the importance of humanitarian work. Clara Barton was deeply inspired by what she saw and heard in Switzerland. She saw the potential for such an organisation in the United States, where the needs for humanitarian aid were growing, particularly in the wake of the Civil War. Clara recognised that the country would benefit greatly from an organisation like the International Red Cross, one that could not only respond to the needs of soldiers during wartime, but could also offer assistance during peacetime crises. She understood that the time had come for the United States to establish its own branch of the Red Cross, based on the same principles that had guided the International Red Cross. While in Europe, Clara also learned about the Red Cross's work in dealing with epidemics. In many parts of Europe, the Red Cross had provided relief during outbreaks of cholera, smallpox, and other diseases, sending medical teams to quarantine areas, provide care, and educate communities on how to prevent the spread of illness. This aspect of the Red Cross's work resonated deeply with Clara, especially after witnessing the devastation of diseases during the Civil War. She knew that the United States was also vulnerable to epidemics, and that a structured system of response could save countless lives. Clara's interactions with the leaders of the International Red Cross strengthened her resolve. She learned about the challenges they faced, including the difficulties in maintaining neutrality during conflicts and the struggle to secure the necessary funding and resources. Clara, however, was undeterred by these challenges. Instead, she saw them as obstacles to overcome, believing that a well-organised effort could overcome these hurdles and provide the necessary support to those in need. When Clara returned to the United States in 1873, she brought with her the knowledge and inspiration she had gained in Europe. She immediately began working to establish a national Red Cross organisation. Clara knew that she needed to build support from influential figures in both the government and the philanthropic community. She began lobbying for the creation of a Red Cross in the United States, citing the successes of the International Red Cross and the vital need for a similar organisation in America. Her efforts were not without resistance. Many Americans were sceptical of the idea of a foreign organisation operating within the country, and there were doubts about the feasibility of establishing such an organisation in the post-war climate. Clara, however, remained steadfast in her mission. She knew that the American Red Cross would not only help provide aid during wars, but could also offer critical support during natural disasters, such as floods, fires, and epidemics. She was passionate about the potential of the organisation to bring aid to those in need, regardless of the circumstances. Clara Barton's persistence paid off in 1881 when, after years of lobbying and advocating, she was able to establish the American Red Cross. The organisation's mission was clear: to provide emergency relief during times of war, to assist communities affected by natural disasters, and to help those in need during times of epidemic or crisis. Clara Barton's vision for the Red Cross was rooted in the principles she had observed during her time in Europe: impartiality, neutrality, and independence. These values would guide the organisation for generations to come. Clara's journey to establish the American Red Cross was a testament to her dedication, her ability to lead, and her deep belief in the power of service. The International Red Cross had shown her the way, and it was now up to her to bring those lessons to the United States. As the first president of the American Red Cross, Clara would work tirelessly to expand its reach and impact, ensuring that the organization was prepared to provide aid whenever and wherever it was needed. Her time in Europe had shaped her understanding of what humanitarian aid could achieve, and it had given her the tools and knowledge to build an organization that could have a lasting impact on the lives of countless people. The American Red Cross, founded by Clara Barton, would go on to become one of the most respected and effective humanitarian organizations in the world, and Clara's work would leave a legacy that continues to inspire generations of individuals committed to serving others. Clara Barton's dream of creating an American counterpart to the International Red Cross was realized in 1881, when the American Red Cross was officially founded under her leadership. After years of lobbying, advocating, and gathering support, Clara succeeded in establishing an organization that would become one of the most respected humanitarian institutions in the world. The American Red Cross was grounded in the same principles Clara had observed during her time in Europe: impartiality, neutrality, and independence. Its mission was simple yet profound: to provide disaster relief, medical assistance in wartime, and aid to communities affected by disease, famine, and other crises. The path to the creation of the American Red Cross was not an easy one. Clara faced significant opposition from both the government and the public, who were skeptical of the need for such an organization, especially after the end of the Civil War. Many questioned why a new organization was necessary when the country had already experienced the challenges of war and was focused on reconstruction. However, Clara was determined. She knew that the need for humanitarian work was ongoing, and she saw the growing challenges posed by natural disasters, epidemics, and the potential for future conflicts. She recognized that the United States needed an institution that could respond quickly and effectively to these crises. Clara's persistence paid off when she finally secured a meeting with President Chester A. Arthur in 1881. At that meeting, Clara made a compelling case for the establishment of the American Red Cross. She spoke passionately about the humanitarian principles of the International Red Cross and the need for a similar organization in the United States. Clara emphasized the organization's potential to provide disaster relief in times of peace, not just wartime, and to assist communities during epidemics, floods, and other calamities. Impressed by her determination and the merit of her proposal, President Arthur lent his support to Clara's efforts. This endorsement was crucial in gaining the approval of the US government, and with his backing, Clara was able to move forward with the founding of the American Red Cross. In 1881, the American Red Cross was officially incorporated, with Clara Barton as its first president. The early days of the American Red Cross were challenging, as Clara worked tirelessly to establish its structure, recruit volunteers, and secure funding. One of her first priorities was to create a system for responding to disasters. The organization's response to the first major disaster, an epidemic of smallpox in 1882, demonstrated Clara's leadership and the Red Cross's potential. Clara quickly mobilized a team of doctors and nurses to assist those affected by the disease. This early success helped solidify the Red Cross's reputation as an effective and compassionate humanitarian organization. In the years that followed, Clara continued to expand the American Red Cross's reach. She worked to ensure that the organization could respond to both natural and man-made disasters, including the devastating floods that struck the Midwest in the 1880s. Clara also focused on training volunteers and building a network of support throughout the country. Under her leadership, the American Red Cross grew rapidly, gaining recognition for its efficient response to crises and its ability to provide vital aid to those in need. One of Clara's key innovations was her development of a comprehensive system for disaster relief. She recognized that successful relief efforts required careful planning and organization, and she established a network of local chapters that could respond to emergencies at the regional level. The American Red Cross would send teams of volunteers, including medical professionals, to the affected areas to provide medical care, distribute supplies, and assist with recovery efforts. Clara also pioneered the collection and distribution of financial donations, ensuring that the organization could continue its work during times of crisis. Clara Barton's leadership in the early years of the American Red Cross was marked by her unwavering commitment to service and her ability to inspire others to join her mission. She was known for her tireless work ethic, often working long hours without rest. Her dedication to the cause was matched only by her deep empathy for those in need. Clara was not merely an administrator. She was a hands-on leader who personally supervised relief efforts, visited disaster sites, and provided direct care to the victims of natural disasters and disease outbreaks. Despite the success of the American Red Cross, Clara's leadership was not without its challenges. She faced internal struggles within the organization, including resistance from members of the Red Cross Board of Directors who had different ideas about how the organization should be run. Clara's autocratic style of leadership, honed during her time on the battlefield and in the field hospitals, was at odds with the more bureaucratic approach favoured by some of the board members. This tension eventually led to Clara's resignation from the presidency of the American Red Cross in 1904, after more than 2 decades of service. Although Clara Barton stepped down from her role as president, the organization she founded continued to thrive and expand. The American Red Cross's work during the early 20th century laid the groundwork for the organization's future success, and its mission of providing disaster relief, supporting soldiers and their families, and promoting health and welfare remains a core part of its work today. Clara Barton's legacy as the founder of the American Red Cross is deeply embedded in the history of humanitarian aid and disaster relief. In the years following her resignation, Clara remained active in the cause of humanitarian service. She continued to work with the Red Cross and other organizations, advocating for the needs of the poor, the sick, and the suffering. She also wrote extensively about her experiences, sharing her knowledge and insights with others who were committed to helping those in need. Clara's work left an indelible mark on the world, and her influence can still be felt in the mission and work of the American Red Cross today. The founding of the American Red Cross marked the culmination of Clara Barton's long and remarkable journey. From her early years as a teacher and nurse to her work on the battlefields of the Civil War, Clara's life was defined by her unwavering commitment to service. Her dedication to helping others, her ability to organize and lead, and her deep compassion for those who suffered were the qualities that made her a trailblazer in the field of humanitarian aid. The creation of the American Red Cross was Clara's greatest achievement, and it continues to serve as a testament to her vision, her leadership, and her profound commitment to humanity. Her work changed the landscape of disaster relief and paved the way for future generations of individuals and organizations dedicated to alleviating human suffering. Clara Barton's legacy is one of compassion, resilience, and a relentless drive to make the world a better place for those in need. Clara Barton's vision for the American Red Cross began to take shape through its early disaster relief efforts, marking the start of a long-lasting legacy of humanitarian aid. Though Clara's most famous work would be in wartime relief, it was during times of peace, when the country faced natural disasters and epidemics, that the full impact of the Red Cross's work was first felt. These early relief efforts established the organization as a critical institution for providing aid in times of crisis and laid the foundation for its future work around the world. One of the first major tasks Clara faced after founding the American Red Cross was the need to organize relief for victims of natural disasters. In the late 1880s, the Midwest was hit by a series of devastating floods, and the need for coordinated disaster response became clear. Clara's experience during the Civil War, where she had overseen the distribution of supplies and the organization of hospitals, provided her with the skills needed to mobilize resources for disaster relief. She immediately took action, sending teams of nurses, medical professionals, and volunteers to assist those who had been affected by the floods. What made the American Red Cross unique in its response to these floods was its ability to rapidly mobilize a response. Clara recognized that disaster relief could not be reactive but must be organized and strategic. The organization needed to be prepared for the inevitable aftermath of calamities, whether they came in the form of floods, earthquakes, or disease outbreaks. In this early stage, Clara worked to ensure that the Red Cross was equipped with the supplies, personnel, and infrastructure to provide timely aid. During these first efforts, Clara demonstrated not only her organizational skills but her compassion for those in need. She visited flood-affected areas, personally overseeing the delivery of food, medical supplies, and clothing to the displaced families. Clara's leadership was pivotal in ensuring that the resources were distributed efficiently, and she worked tirelessly to establish temporary shelters and hospitals to care for the sick and injured. Her ability to personally connect with those affected by the disaster helped to foster trust and ensure that people felt cared for and supported. In addition to providing immediate aid, Clara was instrumental in laying the groundwork for the future of the American Red Cross. She worked closely with local officials, ensuring that the organization's efforts were in alignment with government relief agencies, while also filling in the gaps where assistance was most needed. This approach was a defining feature of Clara's leadership, as she understood that effective relief efforts required cooperation with various organizations and the ability to adapt to the unique needs of each situation. Clara's ability to provide aid in the aftermath of floods was not just about the distribution of supplies. She also recognized the importance of mental health support during times of crisis. Many of the survivors had lost everything: homes, belongings, and loved ones. And Clara understood that they needed more than just physical care. She encouraged the volunteers and medical personnel to offer emotional support, to listen to the stories of those who had lost so much, and to provide reassurance that help was on the way. Clara's deep empathy for those suffering during the floods allowed her to create a supportive and caring environment for everyone involved. Following the success of the Red Cross's relief efforts during the floods, Clara and her team were called upon again in 1888, when a devastating earthquake struck Charleston, South Carolina. Once more, Clara mobilized the Red Cross to provide immediate assistance to the affected communities. This time, the organization had grown more efficient, and Clara was able to draw upon the lessons learned from previous disasters. The Red Cross was able to quickly send medical teams, distribute food and supplies, and set up temporary shelters for those who'd been displaced. In the wake of these early relief efforts, the American Red Cross began to gain national recognition. The organization was no longer just a response to wartime needs, but had established itself as an essential part of the country's infrastructure for disaster relief. Clara's dedication to helping those in need, her ability to organize relief efforts on a large scale, and her focus on long-term recovery solutions were key to the Red Cross's success. The organization continued to expand its efforts, becoming a respected entity not only in the United States but also internationally. Clara's early disaster relief efforts were crucial in shaping the Red Cross's mission. While wartime relief would always be an essential part of the organization's work, Clara's vision for the Red Cross extended far beyond the battlefield. She saw the need for a comprehensive, organized system of disaster relief that could respond to the crises faced by civilians in times of peace. The work she began in the 1880s set the stage for the Red Cross's future role in providing aid to communities around the world during times of crisis. The Red Cross's work during these early disasters also helped to solidify Clara's reputation as one of the leading humanitarian figures of her time. Her relentless efforts to ensure that the needs of the affected populations were met demonstrated not just her organizational skills, but her deep sense of compassion and responsibility. Clara was not merely an administrator of relief efforts. She was a hands-on leader who believed in the importance of personal involvement in times of need. Her willingness to visit disaster-stricken areas, work alongside volunteers, and offer emotional support to survivors helped to make the Red Cross's efforts not just effective, but deeply meaningful. As Clara continued her work with the Red Cross, she remained committed to expanding the organization's scope. The success of the American Red Cross in the aftermath of the floods and earthquakes was just the beginning. Clara knew that the Red Cross had the potential to do even more, to provide relief on a global scale and to help people in need no matter where they lived. The early disaster relief efforts were a testament to the power of coordinated humanitarian aid and to the enduring impact of Clara Barton's vision for a world where no one would be left to suffer without help. With the successful establishment of the American Red Cross and its early disaster relief efforts, Clara Barton turned her attention toward expanding the organization's reach, solidifying its place in American society, and positioning it for even greater impact. Her work with the Red Cross during the aftermath of floods, epidemics, and natural disasters had earned the organization a solid reputation. But Clara knew that to fulfill her vision of a permanent humanitarian institution, she had to broaden its scope and ensure that it could respond to a wider range of crises, both at home and abroad. One of Clara's first steps in expanding the Red Cross was to move beyond just disaster relief and wartime care. Clara recognized that her organization could do more, particularly in times of peace. In the years following the Civil War, the US was still recovering from the war's deep divisions, and Clara saw an opportunity to serve in new ways. She wanted to ensure that the Red Cross was equipped not only to respond to emergencies, but also to actively prevent suffering by promoting health and education. She also sought to help the organization grow beyond its roots in Washington, D.C., and extend its reach into communities across the nation. Clara understood that in order to achieve this expansion, the Red Cross needed to operate with an eye on efficiency and preparedness. One of her key innovations was to establish a network of regional chapters that would act as local centers for humanitarian work. Each chapter was responsible for organizing disaster relief efforts, providing education and training, and supporting the work of the Central Red Cross organization. Clara worked hard to build relationships with local leaders, volunteers and community organizations to ensure that the chapters were integrated into their respective communities and could quickly mobilize in times of need. The establishment of these local chapters marked a significant turning point for the Red Cross, as it allowed the organization to respond more quickly and effectively to crises that affected specific regions. It also gave the organization a broader base of support, ensuring that volunteers from around the country could contribute to its mission. Clara's leadership and organizational acumen were key to making this decentralized system work. She was adept at inspiring people to get involved, whether by donating their time, money, or resources to the Red Cross's efforts. Her personal commitment to the organization's mission, her willingness to travel across the country to visit chapters, oversee operations, and speak to volunteers, further solidified her role as the face of the Red Cross. Clara's commitment to educating and training volunteers also played an important role in expanding the organization's impact. She worked to create a more formalized structure for Red Cross volunteers, offering training in first aid, disaster relief, and basic medical care. She understood that by equipping ordinary citizens with the skills they needed to respond to emergencies, the Red Cross could create a more self-sufficient and resilient network. Clara's emphasis on education and preparedness laid the groundwork for the organization's continued success and its ability to mobilize quickly in times of crisis. As the Red Cross grew, Clara also turned her attention to the broader global context. During her travels to Europe, she had seen the far-reaching impact of the International Red Cross, which had expanded its efforts to countries all over the world. Clara was deeply inspired by the organization's ability to provide relief in various international crises, from war to famine to disease outbreaks. It was clear to her that the American Red Cross too could have a global reach, providing aid not just within the US but internationally as well. Clara worked tirelessly to expand the Red Cross's role in international disaster relief. In 1884, the American Red Cross sent a team of volunteers to assist in the aftermath of a typhoon that struck the Philippines. This was the first international relief mission undertaken by the Red Cross, and it set the stage for the organization's future involvement in global humanitarian work. Although the American Red Cross was not yet as established internationally as its European counterparts, Clara's vision for the Red Cross as a global institution began to take shape. One of the biggest challenges Clara faced in expanding the Red Cross was securing funding to support these international efforts. As the organization grew, so did its need for financial resources. Clara had already demonstrated her ability to organize relief efforts during domestic disasters, but international missions would require a new level of support. Clara worked tirelessly to raise funds, writing to individuals, corporations, and government officials to solicit donations. Her efforts helped secure the financial backing needed to continue the Red Cross's work both at home and abroad. By the late 1880s, the American Red Cross had become a vital part of the US humanitarian landscape. But Clara's vision extended beyond domestic boundaries. She envisioned the organization as an institution that could bring people together across borders, working to alleviate suffering regardless of nationality or political affiliation. Her work helped to pave the way for future Red Cross missions around the world, as the organization began to expand its reach to provide aid during times of conflict and disaster in countries outside the United States. Clara's drive for expansion was matched only by her commitment to preserving the principles upon which the Red Cross was founded: impartiality, neutrality, and independence. She worked tirelessly to maintain the integrity of the organization, ensuring that it remained focused on its mission of providing aid to those in need, regardless of political or military considerations. In doing so, she helped to build an organization that would grow into one of the most trusted and respected humanitarian institutions in the world. By the time Clara stepped down as president of the American Red Cross in 1904, the organization had grown into a well-established force for humanitarian relief. It had expanded its efforts not only in the United States but also internationally, reaching those affected by disasters, disease, and conflict around the globe. Clara's work had transformed the American Red Cross from a fledgling organization into a global humanitarian institution that would continue to serve as a beacon of hope for generations to come. Clara Barton's leadership, vision, and unyielding commitment to service were the driving forces behind the Red Cross's expansion. She had turned an idea into a global institution, and her legacy lived on through the countless lives saved, the community strengthened, and the suffering alleviated by the work of the American Red Cross. Clara's role in shaping the Red Cross's expansion was critical to its success, and her contributions continue to inspire those who follow in her footsteps. In 1898, the Spanish-American War broke out, presenting Clara Barton with a new and daunting challenge. While she had already proven herself on the battlefield during the Civil War, the Spanish-American War introduced new complexities and risks, both for the soldiers and for the humanitarian workers trying to support them. Yet Clara's resolve remained steadfast, and she was once again at the forefront, leading efforts to provide care for the wounded soldiers. The war itself was a turning point in US foreign policy and military engagement, fought between the United States and Spain. The conflict was primarily centered around the US intervention in Cuba's fight for independence. The war's relatively short duration and limited scope did not diminish the physical and emotional toll it took on the soldiers who fought in it. For Clara, the war was an opportunity to further prove the Red Cross's ability to serve in times of both conflict and peace. As the war began, Clara saw a need to assist the military in caring for the wounded and providing medical relief. Clara Barton, by now the head of the American Red Cross, was deeply committed to the mission of providing care in war. She had witnessed firsthand the horrors of war, from the field hospitals of the Civil War to the flood-stricken towns during peacetime. She knew that the US military would need more than just doctors and nurses. They needed an organized and committed force to ensure that no soldier would be left to suffer without proper care. Clara mobilized the Red Cross to provide direct support to the military. This was the first time the American Red Cross was officially called upon to serve in an international conflict. While the Red Cross had already responded to various disasters and emergencies, its involvement in a war abroad marked a new chapter in the organization's history. Clara worked tirelessly to ensure that the necessary supplies and medical personnel were sent to the front lines in Cuba, where fighting had escalated. One of Clara's primary tasks was organising the provision of food, medical supplies and nursing staff to the troops. She worked closely with US military leaders to ensure that the Red Cross's resources were put to the best possible use. As the war raged on, Clara's team of volunteers worked with the military to set up field hospitals, where they could treat the wounded soldiers in more organised and controlled environments. At the same time, the Red Cross focused on the psychological and emotional care of the soldiers, offering comfort, letters home, and a steady presence in the midst of the chaos. While Clara's organisation was able to provide much-needed support, the conditions in Cuba were harsh and challenging. The tropical climate, inadequate infrastructure, and lack of medical resources made it difficult to provide the care that was needed. Many soldiers fell ill due to the heat, unsanitary conditions and poor food, and the Red Cross struggled to keep up with the demand for medical supplies. Yet, Clara and her team did everything they could to ease the soldiers' suffering. They worked tirelessly under difficult and dangerous conditions to provide aid wherever it was needed. One of the key lessons Clara learned during the Spanish-American War was the importance of rapid mobilization. While the Red Cross had always responded quickly to domestic disasters, Clara now realized the importance of establishing networks and systems that could operate at a moment's notice, especially in international conflicts. She began to look at the Red Cross as not just a relief organization, but as a vital force that could be deployed at any time, in any part of the world to provide help and care. The challenges Clara faced during the Spanish-American War were also compounded by logistical issues. The lack of proper infrastructure in Cuba made it difficult to transport supplies, and communication between the Red Cross and the military was often slow and inefficient. Despite these obstacles, Clara remained focused on the task at hand. She organised teams of volunteers who worked day and night to ensure that soldiers received medical attention, and she worked with military officials to ensure that proper supplies were being distributed. The Red Cross's efforts in Cuba were crucial to the success of the military's medical response, and made a lasting impact on the organization's ability to respond to future military conflicts. Although the Spanish-American War was relatively brief, lasting only a few months, it had a lasting impact on Clara Barton and the American Red Cross. Clara's leadership during the war cemented the Red Cross's reputation as a vital force in times of crisis, capable of responding quickly and effectively, both domestically and internationally. The lessons learned in Cuba would guide the Red Cross in future international relief efforts, particularly during the World Wars and other global crises. Clara's work during the Spanish-American War was also pivotal in shaping her legacy as a humanitarian leader. While she'd already achieved recognition for her work during the Civil War and in establishing the American Red Cross, her efforts during the Spanish-American War further solidified her role as one of the leading figures in global humanitarian aid. She demonstrated that the Red Cross could operate effectively in international conflicts, offering support and care wherever it was needed, regardless of the circumstances. Yet, the war also marked the beginning of a period of reflection for Clara. She was growing older, and the physical toll of her work was beginning to take its toll. The demands of managing the Red Cross, especially during times of war, were immense, and Clara was beginning to feel the weight of her responsibilities. In the aftermath of the Spanish-American War, Clara began to contemplate her legacy and the future of the American Red Cross. Despite the challenges she faced, Clara remained committed to her mission. She understood that the work of the Red Cross was never finished, and that there would always be new crises, new challenges, and new opportunities to serve. The Spanish-American War had been just one chapter in the Red Cross's long history, and Clara knew that the organization would continue to play a vital role in the world's humanitarian efforts for years to come. Clara Barton's work with the American Red Cross during the Spanish-American War had established her as a key figure in global humanitarian aid. Her leadership and the organization's rapid success during the conflict showed the world what the Red Cross could achieve in times of crisis. But Clara's vision extended far beyond the borders of the United States. She believed that the American Red Cross could play a significant role on the global stage, responding to disasters and providing humanitarian aid around the world. In the years following the Spanish-American War, Clara focused on expanding the Red Cross's influence internationally. She was deeply inspired by her time in Europe and the work of the International Red Cross, which had been instrumental in providing relief during wars and natural disasters in multiple countries. Clara had seen firsthand how the International Red Cross had responded to crises, including the aftermath of floods, famines, and disease outbreaks. She recognized that the American Red Cross had the potential to do the same, and she worked tirelessly to strengthen its presence on the world stage. Clara's global vision for the Red Cross was realized in 1893, when she was invited to represent the American Red Cross at the International Red Cross Conference in Geneva, Switzerland. This invitation was a significant moment in Clara's life, as it marked the first time the American Red Cross was officially recognized as a partner in the global humanitarian network. Clara's presence at the conference helped to solidify the American Red Cross's position as a respected institution on the international stage, and it gave Clara the opportunity to share her vision for the future of the organization. At the conference, Clara made a compelling case for the role of the American Red Cross in global humanitarian relief. She emphasized the importance of providing aid not only in times of war but also in times of peace. Clara spoke passionately about the need for an organized, neutral organization that could respond quickly and effectively to natural disasters, epidemics, and other crises, regardless of national borders. Her argument resonated with the leaders of the International Red Cross, and her reputation as humanitarian leader continued to grow. Clara's participation in the International Red Cross Conference also marked a turning point in the Red Cross's global influence. By 1900, the American Red Cross was beginning to take on a more active role in international relief efforts. Clara's work in organizing disaster relief for the United States had laid the groundwork for the organization's global expansion, and her leadership helped to ensure that the Red Cross could respond to crises around the world. The first international relief mission that Clara and the American Red Cross undertook was in response to the Boxer Rebellion in China. The rebellion, which took place between 1899 and 1901, had resulted in widespread violence and destruction. As foreign nationals were targeted by the rebels, many were left stranded without the aid they needed to survive. Clara, recognizing the dire situation, worked to organize a team of Red Cross volunteers to provide medical aid, food, and supplies to those affected by the conflict. This mission was a significant step in the American Red Cross's transition to an international relief organization, and it marked the beginning of the Red Cross's global humanitarian efforts. Clara's leadership and dedication during the Boxer Rebellion mission were instrumental in expanding the Red Cross's presence in Asia. While the American Red Cross was still a relatively young organization, Clara's efforts helped to establish a strong foundation for future international missions. Over the years that followed, the Red Cross would respond to various crises in Asia, Africa, and Europe, bringing its humanitarian aid to those who needed it most. In addition to providing aid during international conflicts, Clara and the Red Cross also became involved in responding to natural disasters around the world. One of the most notable of these efforts was the Red Cross's response to the 1900 Galveston hurricane in Texas. The hurricane, one of the deadliest natural disasters in US history, left thousands of people dead and many more homeless. Clara and her team worked quickly to provide relief to the affected communities, sending medical teams, supplies, and volunteers to help those in need. The success of the Red Cross's efforts during the Galveston disaster cemented the organization's reputation as a leader in disaster relief and showcased Clara's ability to lead the organization in times of crisis. By the early 20th century, Clara Barton's work with the American Red Cross had earned her widespread recognition, both in the United States and abroad. She was invited to speak at conferences, receive honorary degrees, and meet with dignitaries from around the world. Clara's name had become synonymous with humanitarianism, and the American Red Cross had gained the trust and respect of people across the globe. However, despite the international recognition and the growing influence of the Red Cross, Clara was not immune to challenges within the organization. As the Red Cross continued to expand, it became more complex, and Clara found herself facing increasing pressure to modernize its structure. Some members of the organization's board disagreed with Clara's leadership style, and tensions began to build between her and other key figures in the Red Cross. Clara's autocratic approach, which had served her well in the early days of the Red Cross, was at odds with the more bureaucratic and professionalized direction the organization was taking. In 1904, after years of internal conflict, Clara stepped down as president of the American Red Cross, though she remained involved with the organization in a more limited capacity. Her resignation marked the end of an era for the Red Cross, but Clara's legacy was firmly entrenched in the organization's history. Her vision and determination had laid the foundation for the Red Cross's global expansion, and her contributions to the field of humanitarian aid would continue to inspire generations to come. The global influence of the American Red Cross that Clara had helped to establish would only continue to grow in the decades that followed. Today, the Red Cross operates in nearly every country in the world, providing disaster relief, supporting health programs, and offering services to those in need. Clara Barton's work set the standard for modern humanitarianism, and her legacy as the founder of the American Red Cross endures in the organization's continued efforts to alleviate human suffering across the globe. Clara Barton's legacy as the founder of the American Red Cross is undeniably profound. Yet her journey to secure the organization's future was not without challenges. While her humanitarian work earned her widespread respect and admiration, Clara's leadership was often met with internal conflicts and resistance, both within the Red Cross and in the broader public sphere. Her struggles for recognition, coupled with disputes over the direction of the organization, created significant tension in her later years, culminating in her eventual resignation as president of the Red Cross in 1904. In the early years of the American Red Cross, Clara's leadership was marked by an extraordinary drive, as she poured herself into the work of the organization with remarkable dedication. Her efforts in organizing relief during the Spanish-American War, the Boxer Rebellion, and natural disasters, as well as her work in establishing the Red Cross's presence both nationally and internationally, left a lasting impact. Clara Barton's hands-on approach and deep personal commitment to service earned her the affectionate title the Angel of the Battlefield, and she became synonymous with the humanitarian ideals of the Red Cross. However, as the Red Cross grew in size and scope, Clara's management style began to create tensions within the organization. Her autocratic approach, while effective in the early days of the Red Cross, became increasingly difficult to maintain as the organization expanded and professionalized. Clara's instinct for control and her desire for efficiency clashed with the growing need for a more structured and collaborative leadership model, one that reflected the changing dynamics of a larger, more complex institution. The first signs of discord came in the 1890s, when the Red Cross began to expand its activities beyond disaster relief and wartime assistance. Clara's central role in guiding the organization's operations and strategic direction led to conflicts with the organization's board of directors, who began to push for a more formalized and less centralized management structure. Clara, however, remained firmly in control, resisting calls for change and preferring to maintain the hands-on leadership style that had been so successful in the early years of the organization. One of the most significant points of contention was Clara's refusal to relinquish control over the organization's finances and day-to-day operations. As the Red Cross grew, the board of directors and other key figures within the organization began to argue for the need to delegate more responsibilities and to streamline its operations. Clara's reluctance to allow others to take on these responsibilities, coupled with her strong belief in her own vision for the organization, created tensions within the Red Cross leadership. The internal struggles over governance and control were further exacerbated by the increasing pressure to maintain the Red Cross's financial stability. While Clara's ability to mobilize resources and secure donations had been critical to the organization's early success, The Red Cross's rapid expansion required a more sophisticated approach to fundraising and resource management. Clara's tendency to rely on personal relationships and her direct involvement in fundraising efforts often clashed with the growing need for a more professionalized approach to finance. This internal strife reached its peak in 1904, when Clara's health began to decline and she was forced to step back from her active role in the Red Cross. Her resignation as president was the result of mounting pressure from the organization's board of directors, who felt that her leadership style was no longer in line with the needs of the growing institution. Clara's departure marked the end of an era for the American Red Cross and signaled the beginning of a new phase in its development, one that would be led by a more professional and less centralized leadership model. While Clara's resignation was a difficult moment in her life, it did not diminish the impact of her work. Her dedication to the American Red Cross had laid the foundation for the organization's continued success, and her influence continued to shape the organization long after her departure. Clara's role as the founder and guiding force behind the Red Cross was recognized by both her colleagues and the public, and her legacy as a pioneer in humanitarian relief was firmly entrenched. Despite the internal struggles and controversies, Clara's contributions to the Red Cross remained undeniable. Her tireless work in organizing disaster relief, advocating for humanitarian principles, and establishing a lasting infrastructure for the organization ensured that the Red Cross would continue to thrive long after her departure. Clara's commitment to helping those in need, her ability to inspire others to join her mission, and her role in transforming the American Red Cross into a globally recognized institution left a lasting legacy that would be carried forward by future generations. In the years following her resignation, Clara Barton remained an active figure in the world of humanitarianism, continuing to advocate for the principles that had guided her work with the Red Cross. She remained involved in various charitable organizations, offering her expertise and leadership to causes that aligned with her values. Her later years were marked by a sense of reflection, as Clara looked back on the organization she'd built and the impact it had on the world. Although she was no longer leading the Red Cross, Clara continued to serve as an ambassador for the organization's mission, speaking out about the importance of humanitarian work and encouraging others to contribute to the cause. Clara Barton's resignation from the presidency of the American Red Cross marked the end of a pivotal chapter in the organization's history, but her legacy lived on in the work of the Red Cross and the millions of lives it continued to touch. The struggles she faced within the organization were a testament to her unyielding commitment to her vision, but they also highlighted the challenges that come with leading a growing institution. Despite these challenges, Clara's contributions to the Red Cross's success were immeasurable, and her role as the founder of the organization remains one of the most significant achievements in the history of humanitarian aid. After stepping down as the president of the American Red Cross in 1904, Clara Barton, though no longer directly leading the organization, did not retire from her mission of humanitarian service. Her health, which had been declining due to the relentless pace of her work, required her to slow down, but her passion for service remained as strong as ever. Clara's later years were marked by reflection on her monumental accomplishments, as well as continued travel, advocacy, and involvement with various causes. Though Clara had resigned from the Red Cross, her commitment to humanitarian work remained unshaken. She travelled to different parts of the United States, often visiting Red Cross chapters and offering her insights and guidance, especially during times of disaster. Clara continued to advocate for the principles of the Red Cross, speaking about its mission and encouraging people to become more involved in charitable efforts. Even in retirement, Clara was still seen as the face of the Red Cross, a tireless champion of its cause. One of Clara's most notable trips during her later years was to Europe, where she continued to nurture international relationships and bolster the Red Cross's global efforts. Although the American Red Cross had already established a significant presence in disaster relief and humanitarian aid, Clara remained deeply invested in its work, particularly its international missions. She travelled to France in 1911 to celebrate the anniversary of the International Red Cross's founding, and to meet with leaders from other national Red Cross organisations. Her involvement in these international efforts helped to strengthen the organisation's global presence, and she became a respected figure among other leaders in the humanitarian field. During her travels, Clara often reflected on the immense impact the American Red Cross had made, not just in times of war, but in the everyday lives of those affected by disasters and disease. Her travels were an opportunity to observe the organisation's efforts abroad, learning from other Red Cross chapters and sharing her own experiences from the United States. Clara's work continued to inspire countless individuals around the world to take part in humanitarian efforts, and her leadership was instrumental in further establishing the Red Cross as a respected global institution. Despite the immense challenges and personal sacrifices she had made throughout her life, Clara Barton remained deeply committed to the cause of humanitarian aid, even as she aged. Her travel was also a means of reflecting on the path she'd carved, both for herself and for the Red Cross. While she had faced opposition and internal disputes within the organisation during her presidency, Clara was able to look back on the vast network of support and relief efforts she had helped establish. She had transformed the Red Cross into a force that would continue to shape the future of humanitarian work for generations to come. As Clara's health continued to decline in her later years, she withdrew from public life to some extent, but her influence was still widely felt. She maintained a close relationship with key leaders within the Red Cross, offering her insights and perspectives on how to best carry the organisation's mission forward. Clara's legacy was not only in the organisation she built, but also in the millions of lives the Red Cross touched, and her guidance continued to resonate even after she was no longer at its helm. Clara's final years were spent at her home in Glen Echo, Maryland, where she had lived for many years. While living in seclusion, Clara remained an advocate for the causes she had championed throughout her life. She continued to speak about the importance of helping those in need, and she was invited to share her experiences at various speaking engagements, though she was no longer as active as she had been in her prime. In her later years, Clara was often described as a woman of quiet dignity, embodying the same compassionate spirit that had guided her throughout her life. Throughout her later years, Clara was also focused on preserving her legacy. She worked to document her experiences, writing letters and memoirs that would be used to inspire future generations of volunteers and humanitarian workers. She also continued to support various charitable causes, including education and healthcare, helping to ensure that the values of the Red Cross, compassion, neutrality, and impartiality, would continue to shape the world. Clara Barton's contributions to the American Red Cross and the broader humanitarian movement were immeasurable. Her tireless work during the Civil War, her efforts in establishing the Red Cross, and her international missions in the years that followed left a profound and lasting impact on the world. Though she faced significant obstacles and personal struggles, Clara's dedication to alleviating human suffering never wavered. Even in her later years, as she slowed down physically, her influence continued to inspire others to take up the mantle of service. Clara Barton passed away on April 12, 1912, at the age of 90. Her death marked the end of an era for the American Red Cross, but her legacy lived on. The organisation she founded continued to thrive, growing into one of the most respected humanitarian institutions in the world. Clara's life and work have continued to serve as a beacon of hope and inspiration for countless individuals dedicated to helping others. Her contributions to the world of humanitarian aid, her role in founding the American Red Cross, and her pioneering work in disaster relief have left an indelible mark on history. Clara Barton's dedication to helping those in need, her vision for an organised and efficient response to crises, and her unyielding compassion for the suffering of others are the qualities that have made her a lasting figure in the history of humanitarianism. Clara Barton's later years, after her resignation from the American Red Cross presidency in 1904, were marked by a quieter, more reflective phase of her life. Although she had left the day-to-day leadership of the organisation, her impact on the Red Cross and on the world of humanitarian aid continued to be felt long after she stepped down. Clara, however, was far from inactive in her retirement. She remained deeply connected to the Red Cross, constantly reflecting on its evolution, its mission, and the contribution she had made to its growth. Retirement for Clara Barton was never an easy or restful period, as it might be for others. Her lifelong commitment to service and her unrelenting drive to help others made it difficult for her to fully step away from the work that had defined her life. Even as her health began to decline, Clara found herself involved in various charitable endeavours, continuing to offer her wisdom and guidance to those who sought her counsel. One of Clara's greatest challenges in her later years was accepting the physical limitations that came with age. After a lifetime of tireless work, often under intense stress, Clara's body began to show the signs of wear and tear. She had suffered from health problems for many years, including fatigue, high blood pressure, and difficulty with her vision. Yet, despite these challenges, Clara remained determined to stay involved in the causes she cared about, albeit in a more limited capacity. Clara spent much of her time reflecting on her work with the Red Cross and her broader mission in life. As she looked back on her years of service, she found a deep sense of satisfaction in knowing that the organisation she had founded would continue to grow and help countless people for generations to come. Her efforts had established a legacy that would far outlive her own lifetime, and this brought her a sense of peace. Still, Clara remained concerned with the future of the Red Cross, knowing that her resignation had left the organisation in the hands of others, who, while well-intentioned, might not have fully understood her vision. In her later years, Clara was also preoccupied with ensuring that her vision for the American Red Cross was fully understood and properly maintained. She spent considerable time writing letters, sharing her reflections and offering advice to the new leadership of the Red Cross. Although Clara's departure from the presidency marked a shift in leadership, she continued to view herself as a steward of the organization's mission. She believed deeply in the neutrality, impartiality, and humanitarian ideals that had driven her to create the Red Cross, and she hoped that the Red Cross would remain true to these values, no matter how much the organization grew or evolved. As Clara Barton moved into the final chapter of her life, she also took the time to visit old friends and colleagues from the Red Cross, as well as to reflect on the friendships and partnerships she had forged during her years of service. Despite the difficulties she faced in her later years, Clara found solace in the knowledge that her efforts had made a lasting difference in the lives of countless individuals. Her legacy was no longer just about the American Red Cross. It was about the countless lives touched by the work of the Red Cross worldwide. Clara had succeeded in her mission to bring humanitarian aid to the forefront of global consciousness, and the organization she had founded would carry her vision forward for generations to come. Despite her physical decline, Clara continued to hold on to the values that had guided her throughout her life. She believed that one's service to humanity never truly ended. For Clara, helping others was not just a job or a role, it was a calling. In her later years, she often spoke of the importance of service and the impact it could have on the world. She encouraged others to live lives of service, to give back to their communities, and to work for the greater good. Clara's life, after all, was a testament to the power of compassionate action. Her example showed that one person, through dedication and service, could make a monumental difference in the lives of others. Though Clara Barton was less visible in the public eye in her retirement, her influence continued to resonate within the Red Cross. The values she instilled in the organization, compassion, service, neutrality, and independence, remained at the core of its work, and Clara's contributions to the world of humanitarian aid continued to inspire others to take up the mantle of service. The Red Cross had grown into a global force for good, and Clara's pioneering work had laid the foundation for that success. In her later years, Clara Barton also took time to reflect on the personal sacrifices she had made throughout her life. Her dedication to the Red Cross had come at the cost of many personal relationships, as her work often required her to travel far from home and spend long hours in the field. Yet, Clara never expressed regret for these sacrifices. She knew that her work was meaningful, and that her contributions were essential to the well-being of those in need. She was at peace with the path she had chosen. Even though it had been filled with challenges and difficult decisions, Clara's retirement years were also a time for her to reflect on the broader issues of health, education, and humanitarian aid. Though she had stepped down from her leadership role, she continued to be an advocate for the causes she had championed. She spoke out on issues such as the importance of healthcare for the poor and the need for better disaster preparedness. Clara's retirement was not about slowing down. It was about continuing to use her voice, her experience, and her influence to inspire others to serve. Clara Barton's final years were marked by both physical decline and reflection on a lifetime of service, leadership, and humanitarian work. As she entered her 80s, Clara's health began to deteriorate significantly. Years of tireless dedication to the causes she believed in had taken a toll on her body, and she faced increasing challenges due to fatigue, high blood pressure, and other health issues. Yet, despite her declining health, Clara's commitment to helping others and her dedication to the mission of the American Red Cross remained unwavering. By the early 1900s, Clara's physical condition had worsened to the point where she could no longer maintain the same level of activity she once had. Despite this, Clara continued to stay involved with the Red Cross in an advisory capacity, offering her wisdom and advice to the leadership of the organization she'd founded. She also remained a public figure in the world of humanitarian aid, traveling to speak at various events and advocate for the importance of humanitarian work. However, as Clara's health continued to decline, these activities became increasingly difficult for her to sustain. In her final years, Clara Barton lived in the small town of Glen Echo, Maryland, where she had moved after stepping down from the presidency of the American Red Cross. The peaceful, rural surroundings allowed her some respite from the busy life she'd led for so long. Although she had retired from the leadership of the Red Cross, Clara remained deeply invested in its ongoing mission and continued to correspond with Red Cross leaders and volunteers across the country. Her influence was still felt within the organization, and many looked to her for guidance and inspiration. During this time of reflection, Clara often thought about the incredible impact the American Red Cross had made on the world. She was proud of the organization's global reach and the lives it had touched. She also reflected on the challenges she had faced along the way, including the internal struggles within the Red Cross, the resistance she'd encountered, and the personal sacrifices she'd made in order to fulfill her mission. Yet despite the difficulties, Clara found peace in knowing that the Red Cross had grown into an institution that would continue her work for generations to come. Though Clara's health prevented her from travelling or engaging in public life as she had in the past, she continued to advocate for the causes she had dedicated her life to. She remained a champion for humanitarian aid, particularly in times of disaster. She continued to speak about the importance of compassion, service, and the need for a structured, organised approach to disaster relief. Her unwavering belief in the importance of these values remained intact, even as her physical strength began to fade. In her final months, Clara became increasingly frail, and her once vibrant presence began to diminish. She had spent the majority of her life in service to others, and her body was finally showing the effects of a lifetime of tireless work. Clara passed away on April 12th, 1912, at the age of 90. Her death marked the end of an era for the American Red Cross, but her legacy lived on in the organization she had founded and in the countless lives it continued to touch. Clara's passing was mourned by people around the world, from the soldiers she'd cared for during the Civil War to the volunteers who had worked alongside her to establish the American Red Cross. Clara had become a symbol of compassion and selflessness, and her death marked the loss of one of the most influential figures in the history of humanitarian aid. Yet, her legacy was far from over. The organization she had built would continue to carry out her mission of providing relief to those in need, regardless of nationality or circumstance. Her work had laid the foundation for modern humanitarian efforts, and the values she instilled in the Red Cross continued to guide its work in the years following her death. In the years that followed Clara's passing, the American Red Cross would continue to grow and evolve, responding to disasters, providing medical aid, and supporting communities in need. The Red Cross's work expanded across the globe as it became a key player in responding to conflicts, natural disasters, and health crises. Clara Barton's vision for a neutral, impartial organization dedicated to alleviating human suffering had become a reality, and the American Red Cross was now an institution with a far-reaching impact. Although Clara was no longer physically present to guide the Red Cross, her influence remained a cornerstone of its mission. The organization continued to operate based on the principles she'd laid out during her lifetime: impartiality, neutrality, and independence. Clara had built a humanitarian institution that would outlive her, continuing to serve people around the world for years to come. In many ways, Clara Barton's life and work were a testament to the power of one individual's ability to make a profound impact on the world. Through her determination, leadership, and compassion, she had built an organization that would provide help and hope to countless people. She had fought for the ideals of humanitarian service, and her legacy continues to inspire people to this day. Clara Barton's death in 1912 did not mark the end of her influence. If anything, it solidified her place in history as one of the greatest humanitarians of all time. The American Red Cross, the organization she founded and nurtured with unyielding dedication, had become a global force for good. Her commitment to alleviating suffering, providing disaster relief, and offering care to those in need continued to shape the world long after her passing. Clara's legacy would live on through the lives saved, the countless individuals who carried on her work, and the millions who benefited from the Red Cross's humanitarian efforts. Clara Barton's impact on the Red Cross was profound and transformative. When she founded the organization in 1881, she did so with a vision of providing not just disaster relief during wartime, but also humanitarian aid in times of peace. The work that she pioneered during the Civil War and the principles she instilled in the Red Cross helped to shape the future of global humanitarian efforts. Under her leadership, the American Red Cross expanded its reach, responding to disasters and crises not only within the United States but also abroad. Through Clara's tireless advocacy, the Red Cross became more than just a national institution. It became a symbol of hope for those in need around the world. Her ability to organize, mobilize, and inspire others ensured that the Red Cross's mission would endure for generations to come. Clara's work during the Spanish-American War, the Boxer Rebellion, and in the aftermath of numerous natural disasters demonstrated the power of organized relief efforts and humanitarian action. She was the guiding force behind the early success of the Red Cross, and her vision for the organization paved the way for its continued growth and global influence. As the American Red Cross expanded under Clara's leadership, the organization's role in disaster relief became more refined and effective. Clara understood the importance of preparation and organization in times of crisis, and she worked tirelessly to establish systems that would allow the Red Cross to respond swiftly and efficiently. The model she created for disaster relief, which included local chapters, volunteer training, and a network of medical and logistical support, laid the groundwork for the Red Cross's continued success. Clara's legacy also extended beyond the Red Cross itself. She was a trailblazer for women in leadership roles, showing that women could be just as effective as men in organizing and leading large-scale humanitarian efforts. In a time when women were often relegated to the domestic sphere, Clara Barton's work challenged the traditional gender roles of the era. She demonstrated that women had the capacity to lead, to make decisions, and to drive change on a global scale. Clara's work opened doors for future generations of women who would go on to lead in humanitarian organizations, public service, and other fields. Beyond her work with the Red Cross, Clara's dedication to service and her example as a leader in times of crisis inspired countless others. She became a symbol of compassion, resilience, and commitment to humanity, and her example motivated individuals around the world to get involved in humanitarian work. Her ability to inspire people, whether they were volunteers, donors, or other leaders, ensured that the values she championed, empathy, selflessness, and neutrality, would continue to guide the American Red Cross and other humanitarian organizations For years to come, the impact of Clara Barton's legacy can be seen not only in the continued work of the American Red Cross, but also in the broader movement of international humanitarian aid. Her work set the stage for the Red Cross's eventual involvement in global crises such as the World Wars, the Korean War, and the ongoing efforts to provide disaster relief and support in times of crisis. The organization she founded became a key player in international humanitarian efforts, bringing aid and assistance to people in need all over the world. Clara Barton's commitment to the principles of the Red Cross, neutrality, impartiality, and independence, remains at the core of the organization's mission. She believed that the Red Cross should operate without regard to political or military considerations, focusing solely on alleviating human suffering. This commitment to neutrality and impartiality helped to establish the Red Cross as a trusted and respected institution that could provide aid to anyone in need, regardless of nationality, race, or creed. These values continue to guide the organization today, ensuring that the Red Cross remains a beacon of hope in times of disaster and conflict. As Clara Barton's legacy endured through the work of the American Red Cross, her influence continued to inspire new generations of humanitarian leaders and volunteers. Her story, her unwavering dedication to serving others, and her ability to organize and lead in times of crisis serve as a model for those who work in disaster relief and humanitarian aid. Clara's impact on the world of service and humanitarian work cannot be overstated. She transformed the landscape of humanitarian relief, and her legacy lives on in the lives of those who continue her work. Clara's story is one of profound resilience, leadership, and compassion. From her early days as a teacher to her role as a battlefield nurse during the Civil War to her work in establishing the American Red Cross, Clara Barton demonstrated a deep and unwavering commitment to alleviating human suffering. Her life and work have left an indelible mark on the world, and her legacy continues to inspire those who are committed to making the world a better place. Clara Barton's contributions to American history are both profound and far-reaching. Her work transcended the boundaries of time and geography, transforming not only the nation's response to disaster and wartime suffering, but also redefining the role of women in leadership. As the founder of the American Red Cross, Clara Barton became a central figure in shaping the modern concept of humanitarian aid, and her impact on both the United States and the world remains a testament to her legacy. Throughout her life, Clara's commitment to service was unwavering. She found her purpose during the Civil War, where she became one of the most celebrated figures in American history. She was known for her tireless work as a nurse and her compassionate care for the soldiers on the battlefield. But Clara's true greatness lay not only in her ability to care for the wounded, but in her visionary leadership to establish an organization that would provide relief to millions of people affected by disasters, disease, and war in the years to come. The American Red Cross was founded in 1881, but its roots go back to Clara's experiences as a volunteer nurse during the Civil War. She saw firsthand the need for a more organized and systematic approach to disaster relief, and she worked to build the Red Cross on the same principles she had embraced throughout her life: neutrality, impartiality, and a commitment to helping anyone in need, regardless of their nationality or affiliation. Clara Barton's work during the Spanish-American War, the Boxer Rebellion, and subsequent disasters helped to establish the Red Cross as a global force for good, while also changing the landscape of disaster relief and humanitarian aid. One of Clara's lasting impacts on American history was her role in shaping the modern concept of organized humanitarian aid. Before the American Red Cross, there were no formal institutions dedicated to providing emergency relief during times of crisis. The concept of neutral, impartial, and efficient humanitarian assistance was largely unknown. Clara's work in organizing disaster relief during the Civil War and later through the Red Cross laid the foundation for the global humanitarian networks we now take for granted. The Red Cross would go on to become a symbol of hope and assistance during times of great tragedy, saving millions of lives and providing critical aid during natural disasters, wars, and health crises. Clara's legacy also extends to the role of women in society. As one of the most prominent female figures in American history, she defied societal expectations and shattered barriers for women in leadership roles. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, women were often excluded from positions of power, especially in areas traditionally dominated by men, such as healthcare, disaster relief, and international diplomacy. Yet Clara's work demonstrated that women could excel in these fields, not just as caregivers, but as leaders, organizers, and innovators. Her pioneering efforts proved that women had the capacity to lead complex, large-scale humanitarian efforts, and she paved the way for future generations of women to take on leadership roles in public service and charitable organizations. Clara Barton's influence extended beyond the American Red Cross and the work of humanitarian aid. Her efforts were critical in shaping the nation's understanding of public service and how individuals, regardless of their background or position, can make a difference in the world by advocating for disaster preparedness, promoting health and safety, and ensuring that people receive the care and support they needed during times of crisis. Clara helped to create a culture of civic responsibility that continues to influence American society today. Her personal sacrifice and dedication to the Red Cross and its mission were monumental. She spent countless hours organizing relief efforts, raising funds, and visiting disaster sites to ensure that those affected received the necessary aid. Despite the personal cost to her health and well-being, Clara remained committed to her cause. Her leadership and determination became a model for others, showing that true service to humanity requires not just dedication, but also selflessness and a willingness to go beyond what is expected. As the Red Cross grew and expanded its efforts in the 20th century, Clara Barton's name became synonymous with compassion, resilience, and humanitarian action. Her contributions to the organization helped to shape its identity and ensured its continued success. Today, the Red Cross remains one of the most respected organizations in the world, operating in over 190 countries and providing disaster relief, medical care, and support for those in need. Clara's legacy lives on in the work of the Red Cross and the countless lives it touches every year. Clara Barton's place in American history is firmly established, not just as a founder of an organization, but as a symbol of the power of one individual to change the course of history. Her tireless commitment to service, her leadership in times of crisis, and her vision for a more compassionate world have made her one of the most revered figures in the history of the United States. Clara's work continues to inspire individuals and organizations around the world to this day, and her legacy is a reminder of the profound impact that one person can have on the lives of others. As we reflect on Clara Barton's life and legacy, it's clear that her contributions to American history and to the global humanitarian movement are immeasurable. Her dedication to alleviating human suffering, her courage in the face of adversity, and her commitment to justice and compassion have left an indelible mark on the world. The American Red Cross, as it continues to carry out her mission, stands as a testament to the enduring power of one person's determination to make the world a better place. Clara Barton's work left a profound and lasting impact on both the American Red Cross and the broader field of humanitarian aid. The principles she established for the organization have continued to shape its efforts, and her legacy as a pioneer in disaster relief and public service endures to this day. Her unwavering commitment to alleviating human suffering, regardless of nationality or affiliation, set the standard for the future of global humanitarian efforts. In the years following Clara's resignation from the American Red Cross, the organization continued to grow and evolve. It expanded its scope beyond disaster relief, becoming involved in public health initiatives, refugee assistance, and disease prevention. Clara's vision for the Red Cross was one of neutrality, impartiality, and effective service, values that remain at the core of the organization's mission. These principles allowed the American Red Cross to become a trusted institution during both wartime and peacetime crises, providing essential aid to millions around the world. One of Clara's most important contributions to the field of humanitarian aid was her pioneering work in disaster preparedness and relief. Her early efforts during the Civil War and the Spanish-American War laid the groundwork for modern disaster response. Clara was one of the first to recognize the importance of a well-organized, systematic approach to disaster relief. She knew that responding to large-scale crises required not only providing immediate assistance, but also ensuring that resources were effectively distributed and that communities could recover and rebuild. Clara's work in organizing and coordinating relief efforts became a model for future humanitarian organizations, both in the United States and abroad. The American Red Cross's ability to respond quickly to disasters, whether natural or man-made, was a direct result of the foundation that Clara built. Her focus on preparedness, training, and logistical coordination allowed the Red Cross to become a global leader in disaster relief. Clara's efforts in creating a network of local chapters and volunteers enabled the Red Cross to reach communities in need, regardless of where they were located. Her organization was one of the first to establish a formalized system for providing emergency relief on a national and international scale. Beyond her work with the Red Cross, Clara Barton's influence can be seen in the many humanitarian organizations that followed in her footsteps. The Red Cross became a model for other organizations that sought to provide relief during disasters and conflicts. Clara's leadership, organizational skills, and dedication to service set a standard for what it meant to be a humanitarian leader. She demonstrated that effective aid could be delivered in an organized and compassionate manner, and her efforts inspired others to pursue careers in humanitarian work. Clara's legacy is also evident in the role that women play in leadership positions within humanitarian organizations. At a time when women were often excluded from formal leadership roles, Clara Barton broke barriers by founding and leading the American Red Cross. Her leadership proved that women could not only contribute to humanitarian work but could lead and inspire others in times of crisis. Clara's success paved the way for other women to take on significant roles in public service and charitable organizations, helping to reshape the landscape of humanitarian aid. The American Red Cross continues to carry out Clara Barton's mission of providing aid to those in need, and the organization has adapted to meet the challenges of modern disasters. From natural disasters like hurricanes and earthquakes to public health crises such as pandemics, the Red Cross has been at the forefront of providing emergency assistance. Clara's work in organizing disaster relief and her focus on training and preparedness have allowed the organization to remain effective in times of crisis, and the Red Cross continues to operate on a global scale, responding to emergencies and providing vital services to those affected. Clara's legacy extends beyond the Red Cross, as her influence on the field of humanitarian aid has been far-reaching. The principles she championed, neutrality, impartiality, and commitment to humanitarian service, have become the foundation for modern disaster relief efforts. Her work demonstrated that providing aid to those in need was not just about responding to immediate crises, but also about helping communities recover, rebuild, and thrive in the long term. Clara Barton's vision for a better, more compassionate world continues to inspire those who work in the field of humanitarian aid, and serves as a reminder of the power of one person's determination to make a difference. Clara's work also laid the groundwork for the creation of other international humanitarian organizations, including the United Nations and the World Health Organization, which would go on to play pivotal roles in providing aid during global crises. Her efforts in shaping the way aid is delivered, particularly in times of war and disaster, have had a lasting impact on the global humanitarian network. Clara Barton's legacy as a leader, organizer, and advocate for the vulnerable continues to shape the way the world responds to crises. As we reflect on Clara Barton's enduring impact, we see a woman whose life and work transcend time and place. Her legacy is not just in the organization she founded or the lives she saved, but in the ideals she upheld. The belief that all people, regardless of nationality or background, deserve care, compassion, and assistance in times of need. Clara's legacy continues to inspire generations of individuals and organizations that work to alleviate human suffering and build a more compassionate world. Clara Barton's life and work continue to influence the field of humanitarian aid and disaster relief to this day. The principles she established for the American Red Cross, along with her personal dedication to helping others, have left a profound mark on the world. Though she passed away in 1912, her legacy endures in the organization she founded, the countless lives saved, and the global humanitarian network she helped create. One of Clara's most lasting contributions to modern humanitarianism is the structure and principles she put in place at the American Red Cross. Her vision of neutrality, impartiality, and independence has become the foundation of the organization's mission. This framework is still at the core of the Red Cross's work, ensuring that its efforts are not influenced by political, military, or national allegiances, but rather focused on the needs of those affected by crises. Clara's commitment to neutrality and impartiality set a high standard for humanitarian organizations. Her belief that aid should be provided regardless of a person's race, religion, or political affiliation was revolutionary at the time, and it laid the groundwork for the development of international humanitarian law. Today, organizations such as the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, IFRC, and the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, continue to operate under the same principles Clara championed, providing aid to those in need without discrimination. In addition to her work in disaster relief, Clara Barton also helped to define the role of volunteers in humanitarian efforts. Her ability to mobilize volunteers during the Civil War and throughout the Spanish-American War was instrumental in building the foundation of the American Red Cross. Clara understood that disaster relief efforts required more than just financial resources. Volunteers were essential to providing the hands-on care, support, and services that would help people rebuild their lives. Today, the Red Cross relies on a vast network of volunteers who play a critical role in its response efforts. Clara's belief in the importance of volunteerism has influenced countless humanitarian organizations worldwide. In fact, the concept of volunteerism, as developed by Clara, has spread far beyond disaster relief, with millions of people around the world giving their time and resources to various causes that aim to alleviate human suffering. Clara's advocacy for public health and preparedness also shaped the modern approach to disaster response. Her work during the Spanish-American War and in the aftermath of floods and disease outbreaks demonstrated the need for a coordinated and systematic approach to addressing public health crises. Clara recognized early on that effective disaster relief required not only the immediate provision of food, medicine, and shelter, but also long-term planning and education to prevent future crises. This focus on public health has become a central tenet of modern disaster response. Organizations like the World Health Organization (WHO) and Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, continue to work in areas affected by epidemics, providing essential medical care and promoting preventative health measures. Clara's belief that humanitarian efforts should be proactive as well as reactive continues to shape the way organizations respond to health crises, ensuring that communities are better prepared for future challenges. Another area where Clara's influence is still felt today is in the field of disaster preparedness. Her experiences during the Civil War, the Spanish-American War, and various natural disasters showed her that effective disaster relief required more than just responding to emergencies. It required being prepared for them. She worked tirelessly to create a framework for organizing disaster response before crises occurred, ensuring that supplies, personnel, and resources were ready to be deployed at a moment's notice. Modern humanitarian organizations, including the Red Cross, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, and the United Nations, have adopted Clara's approach to preparedness, working to ensure that relief efforts are swift and effective when disasters strike. These organizations have developed early warning systems, trained volunteers, and established pre-positioned supplies that can be quickly mobilized in the event of a disaster. Clara's emphasis on preparedness has helped to shape the way the world responds to emergencies, making it possible to provide life-saving assistance in the crucial first hours and days of a disaster. Clara Barton's dedication to global humanitarianism also extended beyond the Red Cross's initial focus on domestic disasters and wartime relief. She understood that humanitarian work was not limited to national borders, and she worked tirelessly to establish the Red Cross as an international force for good. Her involvement in the International Red Cross Conference in Geneva and her support of the Red Cross's work in Europe laid the foundation for the American Red Cross to expand its global reach. Today, the Red Cross operates in nearly every country, providing assistance during natural disasters, armed conflicts, and public health crises. The global network of Red Cross and Red Crescent societies works together to respond to humanitarian needs, often in difficult and dangerous conditions. Clara's vision of a global humanitarian network that could offer help regardless of national boundaries has come to fruition, and the American Red Cross continues to play a key role in international disaster relief efforts. Clara Barton's legacy is also evident in the ongoing importance of humanitarian principles and global policy. Her work laid the foundation for the development of the Geneva Conventions, which govern the conduct of armed conflict and provide protection for civilians, prisoners of war, and medical personnel. Her commitment to neutrality, impartiality, and the protection of human dignity helped to shape the modern understanding of humanitarian law, which continues to guide international efforts to provide relief in times of war and conflict. As we look back on Clara Barton's life and work, it is clear that her contributions to the field of humanitarianism have had a lasting and profound impact. She was a visionary leader who understood the importance of organization, compassion, and global cooperation in times of crisis. Her work has influenced countless organizations, policies, and individuals dedicated to alleviating human suffering. Clara Barton's legacy continues to inspire those who work in humanitarian aid and disaster relief, and her vision for a more compassionate and just world remains as relevant today as it was during her lifetime. Clara Barton's legacy is not just in the organization she founded, but also in the vision she had for future generations of individuals committed to service, compassion, and humanitarianism. Her tireless work during the Civil War, the establishment of the American Red Cross, and her global influence as a leader in humanitarian relief set a standard for future generations to follow. Clara's dedication to alleviating human suffering, coupled with her belief in the power of organized action and community response, continues to inspire people around the world who are working to make the world a better place. One of Clara Barton's most lasting contributions was her belief in the importance of preparation, organization, and efficiency in humanitarian work. She saw early on that in times of crisis the most effective response required more than just good intentions. It required an organized, strategic approach that could mobilize people, supplies, and resources quickly and effectively. Her work in organizing disaster relief during the Civil War and later through the Red Cross laid the groundwork for modern humanitarian responses. Where coordination and preparedness are essential, Clara's vision for the future of humanitarian work included not only the Red Cross's growth, but also the creation of a culture of volunteerism and selflessness. She believed that anyone, regardless of their background, could contribute to alleviating the suffering of others. She championed the idea of ordinary citizens taking an active role in their communities, whether through direct service or by supporting organizations that provided aid. Clara's work continues to influence the way we view service today, as volunteerism and community engagement have become central to modern humanitarian efforts. In her lifetime, Clara Barton became a symbol of compassion, resilience, and leadership. Her ability to inspire people to join her cause, to give of their time and resources, was a key aspect of her success in establishing the American Red Cross. She understood that the work of humanitarian aid was never a one-person effort. It required a collective, united response. Clara worked tirelessly to recruit volunteers, educate the public, and build networks of support that would ensure the Red Cross could provide aid when and where it was needed. Her example has set a high standard for future generations of leaders and volunteers, showing that one person can spark a movement that brings people together to achieve great things. Clara's belief in the importance of service extended beyond just the Red Cross. Her work sparked a broader conversation about the role of individuals in society and their responsibility to care for one another. As humanitarian organizations around the world continue to tackle the challenges of global poverty, conflict and disease, Clara's vision remains a guiding principle. Her emphasis on neutrality, impartiality and compassion serves as a reminder that the primary goal of humanitarian work is to alleviate suffering without prejudice, and that the ultimate aim is to uphold the dignity and humanity of all people. Clara's impact on future generations can also be seen in the way she paved the way for women to take on leadership roles in public service and humanitarian work. During her lifetime, women were often excluded from positions of power and influence, particularly in fields like disaster relief and medicine. Clara defied these barriers, demonstrating that women could not only participate in but could also lead large-scale efforts to respond to human need. She showed that women had the ability to organize, make decisions, and lead with compassion and effectiveness. This example opened doors for future generations of women to step into leadership roles, not only within the Red Cross but across many sectors of society. Clara Barton's legacy also continues to be felt in the global network of humanitarian organizations that carry on her mission. The Red Cross and Red Crescent societies, as well as other international relief organizations, are active in countries around the world, responding to natural disasters, armed conflicts, and public health crises. Clara's vision for an interconnected global network of aid organizations continues to shape the way humanitarian responses are carried out. Today, organizations like the World Health Organization (WHO) and Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, operate with the same principles of neutrality, impartiality, and service that Clara championed during her life. Clara's vision was not just about disaster relief. It was about building a more compassionate world, where people of all nations could come together to help those in need. Her work has laid the foundation for a global network of aid and relief organizations, all driven by the same values that she espoused. Her legacy is seen not only in the ongoing work of the American Red Cross, but also in the countless individuals and organizations that continue to respond to the needs of the world's most vulnerable populations. Even today, Clara Barton's example continues to inspire new generations of individuals who are dedicated to making a positive difference in the world. Her life serves as a powerful reminder that every person has the potential to effect change, and that service to others is one of the most meaningful ways to live a fulfilling life. Clara's example teaches us that when we work together in the spirit of compassion and solidarity, we can achieve extraordinary things. As we reflect on Clara Barton's life and work, it is clear that her influence reaches far beyond the organization she founded. Her commitment to humanitarian service, her dedication to neutrality and impartiality, and her belief in the power of individuals to make a difference continue to guide the work of humanitarian organizations around the world. Clara Barton's legacy is not just about the past, it is about the future and the lasting impact her example will have on generations to come. Clara Barton's life of selfless service and dedication to humanitarian causes came to an end on April 12, 1912, at the age of 90. Though her body had endured the physical strain of decades of tireless work, her legacy lived on through the American Red Cross and the thousands of lives she had touched. As she passed away, the world mourned the loss of one of its greatest humanitarian leaders, yet Clara's work, values, and the organization she founded would continue to influence global efforts for generations to come. Clara Barton spent the last years of her life in seclusion at her home in Glen Echo, Maryland, reflecting on the journey she had undertaken and the legacy she would leave behind. She knew that the Red Cross had grown beyond her and would continue to provide aid to those in need, but she remained dedicated to ensuring that its principles of neutrality, impartiality, and compassion would endure. Her passing marked the end of an era for the American Red Cross, but her vision would continue to guide the organization and the broader humanitarian movement. Clara Barton's final resting place is located at the North Cemetery in Oxford, Massachusetts, a town she'd always considered her home. It was in Oxford that Clara had spent much of her early life, and it was here that she returned to live out her final years after stepping down from her leadership role at the Red Cross. Clara's burial in Oxford is a fitting tribute to the town that shaped her, and to the community that had supported her throughout her life. Her gravesite, marked by a simple but dignified headstone, stands as a testament to the remarkable life she lived and the work she accomplished. Though her resting place is relatively modest, it is a powerful symbol of Clara Barton's humility and commitment to service. She never sought fame or recognition for her work. Rather, her focus was always on helping others. Clara's dedication to humanitarian aid and her quiet strength are reflected in the simplicity of her final resting place, which contrasts with the enormous impact she had on the world. In the years following Clara Barton's death, her legacy continued to inspire those who worked in the field of humanitarian aid. The American Red Cross, under new leadership, expanded its efforts both domestically and internationally, carrying forward the principles that Clara had instilled in the organization. The Red Cross responded to major crises such as the First World War, the 1918 flu pandemic, and the Great Depression, helping to establish it as one of the most respected humanitarian organizations in the world. Clara's influence extended beyond the Red Cross. Her pioneering work in disaster relief, public health, and wartime humanitarian efforts set a standard for the global community. Her advocacy for neutral, impartial, and compassionate aid in times of war influenced the creation of international humanitarian laws, including the Geneva Conventions, which govern the conduct of armed conflict and protect civilians. Clara Barton's vision for a world in which human suffering could be alleviated without discrimination became the foundation for modern international humanitarian work. Over the decades, Clara's impact on the Red Cross was celebrated and honoured by various organisations and governments. Monuments were erected in her honour, and schools, hospitals, and even ships were named after her to ensure that future generations would remember the woman who dedicated her life to helping others. The American Red Cross established a foundation in Clara's name, ensuring that her legacy would live on in perpetuity. Clara's role as a trailblazer for women in leadership positions also became more recognized in the years following her death. During her lifetime, Clara had defied the traditional roles expected of women, leading the Red Cross and pioneering the field of humanitarian aid. Her example opened doors for future generations of women who would go on to take leadership roles in public service, medicine, and international organizations. Today, Clara Barton is seen as one of the foremost female leaders in American history, and her work continues to inspire women around the world who seek to make a difference in their communities. Clara Barton's story is one of resilience, dedication, and unyielding compassion. She was a woman who overcame personal struggles, societal barriers, and immense physical hardships to leave a legacy that would change the course of humanitarian work forever. Her life demonstrated that one person, driven by the desire to alleviate suffering, could create an organization that would impact millions of lives. Clara Barton's vision and determination built the foundation for the global Red Cross movement, and her contributions to disaster relief, public health, and the protection of human dignity continue to shape the world to this day. As we remember Clara Barton, it is not only her name and her work that endure, but the very ideals she championed: service, compassion, and a commitment to alleviating human suffering. Her legacy serves as a constant reminder that one person can make a difference, and that by working together, we can create a more compassionate and just world. Clara Barton's contributions to humanitarian work were groundbreaking, and her legacy continues to resonate in the field of disaster relief, public health, and humanitarian aid. Through the American Red Cross, she established an enduring model for responding to crises, providing support to the sick and wounded, and offering aid during wars and natural disasters. Her impact is felt in the countless lives that have been saved or improved by the work of the organization she founded, as well as by the global humanitarian movement that continues to draw inspiration from her pioneering efforts. Throughout her life, Clara Barton was committed to serving others, whether it was organizing medical care for soldiers during the Civil War, founding the American Red Cross to provide disaster relief, or advocating for the rights and welfare of the disadvantaged. Clara was driven by an unyielding belief that humanity's greatest calling was to care for the suffering. She was a tireless leader who worked to create systems of aid that were organized, efficient, and compassionate. Her ability to rally people together for a common cause, regardless of national or political boundaries, laid the foundation for the modern Red Cross movement and many other humanitarian initiatives. One of Clara's key innovations was her vision for a global network of aid organizations. In addition to establishing the American Red Cross, she worked to build relationships with international Red Cross societies, helping to strengthen the global network of humanitarian aid. Her contributions to the development of the Red Cross movement extended beyond the United States, with Clara actively participating in international humanitarian conferences and missions. She worked tirelessly to promote the values of neutrality, impartiality, and volunteerism, ensuring that these principles would become the cornerstones of modern humanitarian action. Clara Barton's work also paved the way for future advancements in disaster response. Her early experiences during the Civil War and her leadership in organizing relief during wartime allowed her to develop a deep understanding of the complexities involved in providing aid in times of crisis. She recognized that disaster response required more than just immediate relief. It required preparation, coordination, and long-term recovery efforts. These insights would later be incorporated into the modern practices of disaster management and relief coordination, setting a standard that is still followed today. In addition to her work in disaster relief, Clara was also a staunch advocate for the importance of public health initiatives. Throughout her life, she witnessed the devastating effects of epidemics such as cholera, smallpox, and the flu on both soldiers and civilians. Clara understood that public health was as important as medical care in times of crisis, and she worked to raise awareness about the importance of disease prevention and health education. Her work in public health was one of the many ways in which she expanded the scope of the Red Cross's efforts beyond just disaster relief, ensuring that the organization played a crucial role in promoting health and well-being for all. Clara Barton's influence on the role of women in public service and leadership cannot be overstated. At a time when women were often relegated to domestic roles, Clara Barton showed that women could excel in leadership positions, particularly in the fields of healthcare, public service, and humanitarian aid. She not only led the Red Cross but also served as a role model for future generations of women who would go on to take leadership roles in other organizations and sectors. Her life demonstrated that women had the capacity to organize, lead, and make a profound difference in the world. Clara's contributions also extended beyond her work with the Red Cross. She was involved in a wide range of charitable and civic organizations, all aimed at improving the lives of those who are most vulnerable. She supported educational initiatives, advocated for the rights of women and children, and worked to improve the living conditions of the poor and disenfranchised. Her broader commitment to social justice and her belief in the dignity and worth of every individual informed her humanitarian work and shaped her vision of a more compassionate and equitable world. The American Red Cross continues to be one of the most respected humanitarian organizations in the world, providing disaster relief, supporting public health initiatives, and responding to emergencies in more than 190 countries. Clara Barton's vision for the organization has endured, and her legacy lives on through the millions of people whose lives have been touched by the Red Cross's work. The organization's commitment to neutrality, impartiality, and volunteerism, values that Clara instilled in its foundation, continues to guide the Red Cross's efforts to provide assistance to those in need, regardless of nationality, race, or political affiliation. Clara Barton's story is a testament to the power of one person's vision and dedication to making the world a better place. Her life's work has inspired countless individuals to take up the mantle of service and to continue her mission of alleviating human suffering. The Red Cross, as well as many other humanitarian organizations that followed in Clara's footsteps, continues to carry forward the values of compassion, neutrality, and selflessness that she championed throughout her life. Her legacy remains a guiding light for those who work to make the world a more just, caring, and humane place for all. As we look back on Clara Barton's life and work, we can see the extraordinary impact she had on the world. Her commitment to service, her leadership, and her vision for a more compassionate world have left an indelible mark on history. Clara Barton's influence continues to be felt in the work of the Red Cross, in the field of humanitarian aid, and in the lives of those who strive to follow her example of selfless service to others. Clara Barton's life was one of purpose, compassion, and dedication, and her legacy will continue to inspire generations to come. Clara Barton's story is one of immense courage, resilience, and unyielding dedication to the alleviation of human suffering. From her early days as a teacher to her pioneering role as a nurse during the Civil War, Clara's path was always defined by her unwavering commitment to helping those in need. Yet it was her founding of the American Red Cross in 1881 that truly cemented her place in history, creating a global force for humanitarian aid that continues to save lives and ease suffering to this day. Her legacy is carried forward through the countless individuals and organizations inspired by her work. Clara's belief in neutrality, impartiality, and a humanitarian response that transcended national boundaries shaped the foundation of modern disaster relief. Her influence can still be seen in the work of the Red Cross, the countless humanitarian organizations that followed in its footsteps, and the millions of lives touched by the power of compassion and organized care. Clara Barton's life serves as a beacon of hope and a reminder of the extraordinary impact one person can have on the world. Through her vision, dedication, and unwavering service to others, Clara Barton changed the course of humanitarian history and left an indelible mark on the hearts of people around the globe.